Hey, everybody. Welcome to HR Summer School, Mythbusting 4 Lies About Work. This is our kickoff for the year. I'm so pumped, George, to be here. Welcome, my friend.
Hey, it's always great to be in the midst of greatness as yourself, Professor Ben Eubanks. But listen, it's a great time. The first kickoff of the year of our HR Summer School. I'm so excited for everything that we have planned for today, incredible sessions and speakers. And then always get to be on a live event, virtual event with the Ben Eubanks.
Oh, goodness gracious. Hey, I think it's your mission in life to make me as uncomfortable as possible. So, hey, thank you for starting us off on that foot. To everybody out there, we're glad you're here with us. We're looking forward to some fun. We're going to jump right into it because we're going to have some great conversations. George and I are leading off with a brand new session today we've never done before that we're going to be sharing with you, and we're going to dive into some great conversations with our speakers. Let's get to some housekeeping things, all the good things that you need to know as we're going through the session today.
First off, as always, these are some of the most important things that we have for you. Some of our housekeeping that we want to give. We're going to have tons of giveaways, some fun giveaways. So make sure you stay engaged. We love that you like, share, comment this live stream to your audience. And so please do so as we're going to be looking in the comments. And as always, it's a great place to network. So make sure you drop in. Let us know where you're from. We got HR Summer School alumni from all over the states, the country. And so we want to make sure that everybody is represented here today. Maybe your comment will make it up onto the live stream as well. As always, at the end of the live stream, we're going to have our SHRM and HRCI credits at the end of the stream. So you stay tuned for those things. It's 2.5 hours credits that's been approved for that. And we'll show those credits at the end once we get there, right before giveaways. And so right after the giveaways, we'll do that. This live stream is live. We're here. And so with technology, we always want to buffer. You never know what could happen if we break the internet. Once again, we have the history of doing those things every once in a while. We hope we don't have any technical issues, but if we do, trust that we'll be back up and running quicker. But also, times are approximate. Some things may linger a little bit early, may go a little bit later than normal. So stay tuned for that. But we got some exciting things for you on that end. Also, over to the next slide. We want to make sure that we say a special thank you to all our partners. We want to thank our partners, isolved, Hi Bob, and Take Command for being a part of this and helping produce this live event today for all of you today. So a couple of announcements there. Ben, what do you have for us?
Man, we have some awesome speakers. I am so excited to hear from them, learn from them, some returning friends of summer school and some new faces as well. So excited to have Amy and Ken back with us. They were both hits last year at summer school. And then we also have Prejean and Jack here with us to share some different things, talk about everything from myths in the world of benefits, myths in employee mental health, myths around all that AI stuff we're hearing about, and everything in between. So many good topics we're going to be covering with this. It's going to be a blast. So really quickly, here's the agenda we'll be going through today. We'll show it again in a little bit. As you said, George, timing's approximate. We try to give enough time that you and I can sort of do a recap on these and share some of the key comments from the audience we're hearing and seeing as we're going through. So it's not just stream to stream to stream, but we're trying to make sure that we're giving you some of our takeaways. Because when you chat with Prejean, I wasn't there. I want to hear what y'all have to say and then share some of my takeaways, and vice versa when I'm talking to Amy and some of the others. So I know we're gonna have some fun with that one. So all the good stuff. I'm seeing the comments rolling. Thank you all for already being engaged and supportive in here with us. We're excited you're here. George, are you ready to talk about some myth busting here? You ready to do it?
If it's true, maybe. I don't know if you can say the word right or not. I don't know.
Myth busting, sir. Myth busting. Let's do this thing.
Myth busting as Ghostbusters.
Yes. So when George and I were talking about how to kick off the year, one of the things that stuck out to me is so many of the things that I learned early on in my career, some of them were true and I've held to those. Other things were completely untrue. I mean, I remember being told something by one of my bosses in HR, no less, that I quickly found out was like their cop out because they didn't want to do hard things. And so listen, we're in this to do the hard things. That's a big part of our work every day. We're not in HR for the glory and the applause. We're in it because we care about the people and the results and the impact we can have. So we're going to talk about some of the lies at work, some of the things that affect the work we all do. And as usual, I'm going to start off with a quick story that helps me illustrate this. So years ago, I was maybe 12 or so. My parents took us out to Gatlinburg, Tennessee for a winter break. And we're up there and they decided, let's go skiing together. We'd never been. And so after a little bit, I'm 12 years old, I'd done the little bunny heel a couple times, and I didn't feel confident at all. First time on skis, I kept falling over. I got cold. Okay, so I went inside, sitting there, drinking a hot chocolate, watching everybody else out there freezing to death. Finally, I'm like, oh gosh, it's been an hour. I hustle back outside, and my dad's like, where were you? I was looking everywhere. I said, I did that hill over there. I pointed at the nearest mountain, and it's huge, like extends up past the clouds. He's like, you did that? Like, yeah, that's where I've been. And he's like, okay. So he takes off, and later on we're packing up to leave. And I said, well, where'd you go? He said, you told me you did that mountain. So I thought, well, if you did it, I could probably do it. So he goes up there, and he gets off the chairlift, and he looks down, and he can't even see the ground. He's so high, he's above the clouds. And he said, the only time I was on my feet is when I went over the edge, and then I fell down the rest of the mountain pretty much all the way to the bottom. And I tell that story because I'm like, hey, sorry, I actually didn't do that. I was inside just drinking hot chocolate, staying warm because I was freezing to death. But I tell that story because he took action on something because he believed it to be false, or he believed it to be true. Sorry, he believed it to be true. It was not true. And the reason we want to do some myth busting today with all of you is we want to tell you some things that we are hearing, we have heard, we have seen that are not true, because we don't want you to take action on them, believing them, or getting caught up in other people believing them, because that's going to lead you down the wrong path. Probably not going to lead you to fall off of a mountain like my dad did, but it's going to lead you down the wrong path overall. All right, George, what are our top 4 myths we want to bust today?
Today, we're going to talk about, we're going to break this down between you and I about, number one, people are motivated primarily by money. This is something that we see a lot of questions. And so when we gather some of these questions that we've been hearing amongst some of our people over the last quarter or so of events last year, this is one of the top things that I want to say, hey, Ben, I want to hear your thoughts on this, Mr. Payroll Promise Author Extraordinary. And so this is one that I'm really interested in. The second one is HR should stay in its lane. This is a very interesting one because in my previous life, Ben, I told you I had a small consulting company to call In Your Lane. And so it was just coaching and consulting for wireless repair stores in the tech space many years ago. And so this is going to be interesting because I got a little twist, and maybe this old head has a new perspective on that. Then thirdly, flexibility. Flexibility makes people less productive. What does this look like? And I know we got some research on that you're going to be sharing as well. And then number 4, burnout and balance are individual problems.
Excellent. What I love about this is when we put these together, we didn't set out to make sure the content today aligned with all of these. And yet the content today is going to align with a lot of the things we're going to be talking about in this session. So you'll hear us talk about it from our perspective. You'll get a chance to hear some of our guests talk about these different things from their own perspectives as we go. So let's jump right into this. We've got a ticking clock, and I want to hear from you on some of these things as we're going through. So number 1, people are primarily motivated by money. What we see in the research, especially when it comes to people who are doing work like us, people who are doing knowledge work, if you want to call it that, people are doing work not as much with their hands, but with their heads. What we find is that people are motivated by money like this much. They're motivated by all these other things this much. And it comes down to things like autonomy. Do I have choices and control? Do I have the ability to have a say-so in how my work gets done? That gives people a lot of motivation. When they're held under someone's thumb, they don't really like that. None of us do. We can agree on that one. So having some autonomy, some control, some choices and opportunity, that matters deeply. The second one is mastery. People are motivated by progression. People are motivated by progress. And I want to hear you, George, in a minute talk about that. People are motivated by the ability to go from point A to point B and feel like they've accomplished something. They're not motivated just by someone throwing some dollars at them. That motivates them for only a brief period of time, and then it returns back to their base level of satisfaction. That's what the actual psychology research shows. And thirdly, people are motivated by purpose, by knowing that the things they're doing really matter. We did an experiment on this in our research about 2 years ago with actual candidates for jobs, and we said, listen, you could apply for either one of these jobs. One of them on the job ad, it talks about the company and the industry they're in, how great the organization is. The other one says, here's the impact you'll have. And what we found is that candidates were twice as likely to want to apply to that job when they knew the impact they would have over the industry they'd be in. They didn't even know what the job was, what the company name was, what the details of the position were. They were already leaning forward, though, because they said, I want to have an impact. I want to have purpose in my work. So George, those are a couple of the ones for me that I think are so important. What are your thoughts on that?
You said my favorite one, and that's purpose, right? I think there is a priority with a lot of these different things when it comes to what people are motivated by. And I've said it for so long, is that we all know what we do with our organization. We know our job description, we know our responsibilities, maybe for some of those things. It depends on that training. Yes. But to really connect a sense of purpose, to connect a sense of why, is so valuable for a lot of people, as you said, because it's not necessarily about money anymore. Some of it is growth and development, and a lot of the growth and development is towards a purpose of what I desire to be or desire to go within the future, whether it's with the organization or, hey, I'm going to be here and committed to this organization until I can grow, progress into that next step for me. Hopefully within the company, right? That's the company's goal, so you can have that retention. But ultimately, that sense of purpose is really connected to a why that's greater than what the building can provide. And in most cases, a lot of things is greater than what the leadership can provide. But it's our responsibility, whether it's HR and then also the leadership within the organization, to be able to stir that pot, to be able to stir that purpose and connect it to what they do to give them that belonging.
I think, George, we need to come up with a shirt that's got like a big vat of something, and the front of it says purpose. You're like stirring up some purpose. I love that imagery. Okay.
That's a good one, Ben. That's a good one. Put it on a t-shirt, Jill.
I'll get the credit for the shirt, maybe. Okay. All right. Number 2 here is all yours.
So this is one that I'm really excited about, because prior to life, as I mentioned, Ben, that I was all about staying in your lane. And the purpose of being able to stay in your lane is I was told I was doing too much. I just wanted my hand in every fire, right? I was wanting to be in this business, want to be of this part of this business. And I really needed to focus. My mentor once told me, like, George, if you're trying to be good at everything, you're going to be great at nothing. And so being able to master that one thing. But here, a lot of the times, and I'll say ultimately, I'll admit something, Ben, in my previous entrepreneur life as an owner-operator, I didn't understand the purpose of HR truly, right? And why HR really does not have a lane. And to me, this myth exists for 3 reasons. Number one, it's rooted in an outdated view of what HR or compliance first is and people second, right? So it's compliant first, people second. And this stay in your lane mentality, number 2, usually means don't challenge power, don't challenge the strategy, don't challenge the pace of this. But in reality, people risk is business risk. And so you talk about talent, you talk about the skills, you talk about the culture, you talk about the trust. And I've been dabbling in this conversation a lot with psychological safety. And so that myth exists around those things. The truth is, and again, this is George-ism belief. From my own perspective, the truth to me is that we must be able to understand that HR does not have a lane. HR has a line of sight that is across the entire organization. It should be connected to all business strategies, to the culture strategy, to the sales strategy and marketing strategy, to the people strategy, right? What is the purpose of our people, as we talked about, and that priority? Because I believe in it, that strategy fails or succeeds through people. Right? How they are hired, how they are developed, how they are recognized and acknowledged, how they are also led through those things. The other truth that I'll say is that most effective organizations in 2026, this is my HR prophecy, if you will, is that the most effective organizations in 2026 treat HR as an architect, not as an administrator. And what HR must do differently to be able to help this is move from permission. And now I'm giving you a little, stir the stick with your C-suite here. I'm telling HR, move from permission to positioning. Stop waiting to be invited into the strategy and really say, this is the reason why I should be here for the overall health of the organization. And translate that. Number 2, translate people data into business outcome. It said if you don't know your data, your numbers of your business, nothing's going to change it. So how do we translate people data into business outcomes? How do we translate the revenue? How do we translate retention? How do we translate the speed and or the risk of those things? And for me, I think if we ask better questions, Ben, in the room of leaders that don't want to be asked and are not always asked, like, who breaks under this plan? What capability gap are we creating? What signal does this decision send to the workforce? And so for me, the biggest takeaway when I think about HR should stay in its lane is HR stays in its lane is the organization's drift. When HR helps design the road, performance accelerates, retention accelerates, and ultimately productivity accelerates, which means the number one rule of business is to stay in business, and we're doing so.
Yeah. So someone's like, hey, what was that? Repeat the piece there. It was move from permission to positioning, right? Really thinking about that.
Stop asking for permission and really position yourself. Put your seat at the table, right? For so long we're waiting for permission to be able to have a thought on a strategy that's been down. You have the position. HR is in position to do that. We don't need permission. We just got to be able to take authority of the position that we have and speak. Worst case scenario, what's going to happen?
Goodness gracious, I love it. I'm thinking about some of our data last year we collected on data. That was kind of a meta thing. We collected some research around how HR teams, like all of you, use data or try to use data day to day. And we found that so often we overestimate how well we're telling stories back to the business, back to the managers, back to the leaders about what we're finding, what we're seeing, and what they can do with that. And one of the big takeaways in that research was, don't just show up with a bunch of stuff and data. If you want to sit at that table, like you're talking about, George, show up with an insight. Hey, instead of saying these things are happening, say, we're seeing this trend. Here's what we should do. Here's what I recommend. And actually giving something based on your expertise and not just sharing a bunch of stuff and assuming they can make the best of it. And by the way, someone said that left picture there looks actually like the roads of Houston, pretty close. So
might be.
There we go. All right. So great takeaways there. All right. Number 3 on our list of lies that we have to break is that flexibility makes people less productive. I think we probably are on board with this, but all too often we have managers who are in the office who think, you know what, flexibility, that's just another word for slacking off. That's just another word for lack of accountability. That's just another way to talk about people who don't have to give their full and best effort. And I'll tell you that the research shows the exact opposite. We actually gathered some data around how people learn at work. And we found, when George and I looked at this, there were 2 key things that made people lean forward, want to develop, want to grow, want to build that skill, want to be more adaptable to the environment that we're in right now, which, goodness gracious, demands it so much. Those 2 things were having some autonomy, that's coming up again, and having opportunity. Not just one or the other, but both. When that pair is put together, people want to and will develop themselves and will grow their skills and will lean forward into the opportunities we give them. Now, flexibility overall means a lot of different things, not just the flexibility to grow and develop, but the flexibility to be able to show up when and where they need to, right? They've got family things in the last year. Since our 4-year-old has started preschool, I've had a different schedule at work, and the team around me has had to adapt to that, right? That's a difficult challenge that we're all trying to get through, get around, and figure out. And we have to help our managers do that. I've said for a long time that flexibility as a policy is a great idea, and leadership is always going to say, yes, we care about flexibility, we care about our people, but it's going to make it or break it when it gets that relationship level with that manager. They can say, yeah, sure, flexibility is great. As long as you're here at 8 a.m., it's all good. And that's a struggle. The other part here, I have an image here of an organization that's actually, just found out they're no longer in business, but I've used this story so often. Hot Chicken Takeover, they got started. They did so many good things around their culture. And when the leadership changed, the company started going downhill. Again, that's a whole other story. But one of the key things for me when I heard their story was they did a lot of fair chance hiring. They hired people who had a criminal background or who had some troubles in their past, and they gave them a chance. They gave them some opportunity. That flexibility, when it came to that, was repaid with loyalty. Those people would show up when someone else might call in. Those people would show up. It's like, this company took a chance on me, and I'm not going to mess that up. So flexibility doesn't just lead to people who are going to stick around, but at least people who are more productive, people who are excited to pitch in, people who can't wait to give their best effort, because we've all worked for organizations and for leaders that didn't offer that didn't care about that. This micromanager here in the picture, yeah, we can laugh at it, but we all know those micromanagers do exist that are squeezing our people and that are preventing them from doing their best work, not helping to enable them to do their best work. We have to get around that one. Okay. George, number 4 on our list here.
So Ben, as you were talking, I was thinking about something. I just shared some of this, and it may be, I don't remember if we recorded it or if it was a part of me and Prejean's conversation, but we're talking about the increased difficulty and busy work for HR. And one of the things that we had in our research study and previously was when it came to that, half of HR and payroll leaders reports that their work is harder than it has been in the past because of the workforce demands, requiring them to be higher touch than ever before. And this is something that kind of picked up on because of this whole number 4, burnout and balance are really individual problems. One of the things I've seen is that HR leaders who are bogged down by busy work are struggling to really prioritize tasks and are twice as likely to perceive as administrator rather than strategic by company leadership. And so just to tie in some of those things, what I said previously with the stay in your lane, what you're saying right there, and then also going into this burnout piece with that. I had a person say to me, and this is a gentleman that is my age, so 40s or so, entrepreneur, very successful entrepreneur being, when we were chatting just last year, not understanding why, again, we come from this old adage that we're not just cut from the same cloth anymore. When I grew up, right, my grandfather said, if you wasn't out when the sun rises, then you're late to life. And so these myths that included all these different mentalities from different generations. And I think more than ever, I'm so grateful that we've taken the time to not only acknowledge, but also accept. There's one thing to acknowledge that there is a problem, or acknowledge that burnout is an issue, or even acknowledge that mental health, and we'll talk a little bit about there in sessions later, but to be able to acknowledge these things exist. The myth is so dangerous when it comes to burnout because it frames burnout as a personal weakness instead of a systematic issue. It leads to the surface issue, that surface level solutions, right? Where, hey, maybe I need to do more yoga, or I need a mental health app, and there's great ones out there, and I'm not knocking them, but it's more than, and it's deeper than just those things when it comes to resilience and training, time management tips, or priority management tips. The dangerous of what it really ignores. It ignores the role of leadership behavior that may be causing some of these issues or lack thereof. It ignores workload and workload design and recognition issues within the company. I think when it comes to burnout, the truth to me is that burnout is not caused by a lack of resilience. It's caused by a chronic misalignment within the business and organization and what we are acknowledging or lack thereof as leaders. When I think about the effort that employees are putting in without recognition, just from a mindset standpoint, what that does to an employee when they're not recognized and or acknowledged. And I want to understand that there's a difference between recognition and acknowledgement on those things. But when there's no effort from leadership on the recognition aspect, you think about responsibilities without authority. And what that does, the urgency without recovery. We're so quick to do things at the end of the year. We're ramping up deals for HR benefits and everything is swapping over. And so we're updating all these different things, and there's such urgency. And then we're in the holidays, and next thing you know, it's a new year, and we got to push to make Q1's sale goals. And there's such urgency without the recovery mindset. And we don't think a lot about those things in particular. Another thing is that if large portions of the workforce are burnt out, and it's not an individual failure, it's an operating issue overall. And I believe what we as an organization, I say we because I come from a mindset of an owner operator, what we have to do as an organization, as leaders, not just HR. This is not just HR's ownership. This is C-suite and above, that we have to recognize some things. Is number one, leaders create the conditions where burnout either grows or shrinks. Leadership is responsible for whether or not those groups, we recreate that atmosphere. We are the thermostats, not the thermometers. We're setting the temperature in the room. And so we have to be able to, one, then go on and say, hey, how do we balance? How does balance shape by, right? Balance is shaped by expectations that are clear, are constantly shifting, right? Workloads that are realistic or silently sustainable. And then balance is also shaped by the time that we protected are constantly invading, right? How are we protecting the time that we are asking and or expecting our employees to do these things? And so from a strategic role, we have to redesign work, not just support people within a broken system and say, hey, I'm here for you, George, although the system is not best fit for you and these working conditions. We have to do more than just be there for somebody. We have to hold leaders accountable for how work gets done, not just what gets done within the work. I want people who are healthy and producing versus productivity that is dying dying and killing our people from a mental aspect and from a burnout aspect. And so we have to normalize conversations about capacity. We have to normalize these conversations about their mental health and burnout areas, and not just performance. Performance can't be the norm conversation. And so when we ask people, how are you doing? It's a pause. It's a really caring attitude. It's an empathetic leadership mindset that we must be able to take away. And so you don't fix burnout, in my opinion, by asking people to cope better. You fix burnout by developing work that people can actually sustain.
I'm watching the chat over here and listening to you at the same time, and I'm like getting a little overwhelmed myself. There's so many good comments, good feedback there on that. I think you hit multiple chords with that. I love your approach there, George, where it's not just about you deal with that, let me know when you're good and when you're all over that so we can get back to real work. Yeah. We employ people.
Yeah.
You don't employ just a job title. That person is a full human, and you can't carve out everything else. You can't take that away. You see things like the data that show 7 out of 10 families are living paycheck to paycheck. You can't say, hey, I need you to leave all that money stress at the door and just show up and get your stuff done. They're going to have that weighing on them. So someone asked a question earlier that I want to go back to really quickly because it ties into some of these other things we're talking about here. Christina said, what about management that are using return to office as an excuse to thin out the workforce? And I'd say that's absolutely happening. And the thing that hurts me the most about that is the people who are being peeled off by that whole return to office thing are the ones who are trying to balance out that they're a real human, a real person, and they're not just whatever that job happens to be. People who have responsibilities caring for an aging parent, caring for a child with a disability or something else. Those people are the ones who are going to be the most affected by that in a negative way. And they're the ones who, George, you're talking about, are carrying the heaviest load emotionally.
Yeah. It's amazing. I'm thinking even just this week alone, man, I got, a cul-de-sac full of kids downstairs right now, because here in Indianapolis area, just in Indianapolis area for me, we received 15 inches of snow in my front yard over the weekend, and now it's negative windshield temperatures. And so we went from school delays to school cancels. And it's, how do you pivot from that when people are saying you have to get to the job? For me, if I was to make my one take for the day, and I know I'm making this early, I think the biggest lie about work in 2026 is that people problems are separate from business problems, and they're not. They're the same problem, just viewed at different angles.
Yes. My favorite thing to say is, hey, companies don't solve problems. Companies don't serve customers. Companies don't create products. Your people do all those things.
Yeah.
And if you stop seeing them as people, then you're going to stop getting the best that they have to offer, the best that they can bring to the table. And so many good comments here on this one. I'm thinking about part of what you and I are researching this year. One of our big themes is the very human future of work in a world that's telling us that humans might not matter as much anymore. AI is all the rage. That's the big focus. Like, no, humans matter more than ever, especially in a world where there's all this automated stuff. The human interactions matter so deeply. So I think that's a really, really critical takeaway. All right. So that was our kickoff. Goodness gracious. I'm like all pepped up and pumped up. I want to spend another half hour on this, George. So George and I are sharing this with all of you as a way to get the ball moving, get us rolling. We're thinking about myths as we're going through today. If you have a myth, if you have a thing that you believed about work, a lie that you believed about work that you want to throw into the chat at some point today, please do so. We're going to be looking for those, tagging those, cataloging those, and we'll be using those as part of our giveaways as well for later on. So if you want to throw something in there, that's not the only way to get on the list to get some goodies, but it wouldn't hurt your chances. I'll just say that much. So you got a myth that you think we should have covered in this, feel free to throw it in there. We'd love to hear from you. All right. We've got our opening kickoff. We just started getting into the good stuff. We're going to dive into the conversation with Amy Mosher. We're going to cover some good ground. We asked like almost every one of our speakers, George, about some of the myths that they see. So we're going to get into some of their perspectives on those and other things as well. Great conversation coming up. Let me get this prepped and ready. I should have had you stall for me for a second, George, so I can get this ready to go.
There's no stalling, man. This is just greatness here. I'm loving the chat. I'm actually trying to catch up over here. And so it's important. I love the comments that are going on. They're always incredible to me. I always have a great time reading a lot of these comments. So keep those things flowing. It's very encouraging. And it looks like we got one of our first myths from Angela McKenzie. So I can't wait to bust that open later on. We have time.
Good stuff. All right. We got Amy's conversation ready to go. Here we go. So glad you're here with us today. learning, sharing, growing all along beside each other. It's going to be a blast. And I'm excited to have with us one of our longtime friends, our favorite laugher, Amy Moster here from isolved. My big regret is we were going to do this in person and we didn't get to because of the wacky weather we're all having this week. But Amy, I'm glad to talk to you anyway. Good to see you, my friend.
It's fantastic to see you as well, Ben. Thanks for having me.
We're going to have some fun. We always do. We're going to have a blast together. So before we get into some of the fun stuff, we're going to talk about AI and what's real and what's not, and some of the other lies about work that we may need to dispel some myths around. Would you take a minute and tell the audience more about who you are and what you do, please?
Sure. I'm the Chief People Officer at isolved. It is my dream job. I've been here about 6 years in this role. Prior to this HCM, HR management company, I was also a client prior to becoming the Chief People Officer, which gives me a really unique kind of take on an internal HR and our business as a whole. And I've got about 25, oh my gosh, I'm going to date myself, almost 30 years of HR experience. I've done almost everything from the ground up. So again, makes it super unique, I think, as an HR practitioner to have all of that varied experience.
No one told you, but you're supposed to say 20 plus years at this point. Someone told me that the other day. I was like, you know what? I'm counting up the years. Like, just say 20 plus and save us all a little bit of on-stage math. And there we go. Like,
thank you. I appreciate that, Ben. I appreciate the uplift there. I'll be sure to.
I'm sure. Listen, you and I both know someone right now in the chat is saying 20 plus years here. They're claiming that themselves. So we're all good. We're all friends here. And goodness, I love, as you're talking about, I've done a little bit of everything. I'm thinking, I want to get into all that, but I have some specific things I want to ask you about, and we'll come back around to some of the other things if we have some time today. So the theme today, as everyone else has heard already, is around busting some myths at work. We all believe things that probably we find out later weren't actually true. And today we're having a chance to break into those and share some of those and try to reset on what the real truth is. And so I'd love to hear from you. What is one of the myths, something you've been told or you've heard about work that you found out to be untrue?
From a career perspective, across my career, or most recently? What do you want?
You know what? You take your pick, and we're going to go with it either way.
Okay, I think I'm going to dispel a myth here, and that is that, and everyone in HR, I think, will feel me here, that HR is the policy police. We are definitely not the policy police. Never have we been the policy police, but somebody's got to provide some level of equity and an outline for that, and that is certainly what we do. I love that myth. I am definitely an owner of, I want to know what the practices are, but I'm definitely not a pro policy, everything has to be the same way kind of HR person either. So it's an interesting one. We're not the police.
Sorry, I was going to say, one of the things I learned early on, I read this other HR leader that I followed his blog, again, many years ago, dating myself now. And he said, the best HR leaders have a low rules orientation. And I thought, that is so weird. How is that even possible? Because we're the ones who are putting the handbook together, some other sorts of, we're the ones who are supposed to be the sort of the keeper of the rules. Yeah. And yet he's saying that they're the best one. And it turns out that once he got into his argument, it was, we know when you have to hold to something and when it's sort of not really required and it's just there for simplicity's sake, or this is just going to make things easier today, but we can adapt, we can adjust, we can change. But that picture that he painted of that, for me, very early in my career, helped me to not be the person that was always like pro policy and let's make a rule for this and rule for that. I was very much anti that for most of my career.
Yeah. I think it speaks to your role as an HR person should be bringing both of those pieces together, honestly, like the individual circumstance, the person's point of view and the business acumen and where the business is going. And where all the moving parts are. You're not specific to that one incident, right? You've seen that maybe incident 5 or 6 times now, or you've seen it happen in certain groups of teams and you understand the why a lot differently than the leaders do, than sometimes than the other executives do, certainly the supervisors do, or the employee does as well. So bringing all of those things together, I think, is honestly our role in a lot of different things across the business.
So Amy, one of the things that I love hearing from you typically is what we should be doing. Encouragement, ideas, thoughts, like strategies, all those things. You're always good about sharing that. But I'd love to take a different approach here and say, what is something you think that HR should stop doing in the coming year? We should just cut it out, quit doing it. It's not helping us. It's not adding value. It may be hurting us potentially. What's that thing that you would say?
From an HR perspective, I feel like HR needs to stop deferring so much to leadership. Now, here's what.
Oh, okay.
Now, I'd like to preface my answer here. I feel like there's so much cross connectivity, especially from a communication perspective today with HR. At least there should be. And I feel like we defer a lot to what leadership feels they need to do instead of presenting solutions to them and allowing them to choose from those solutions. And I think if you do the latter, you will create a more strategic relationship with your leadership teams. So for me, a lot of it is like HR is like, leaders, this is what I need, or this is what I not need. This is what I want. And we're not saying, well, this is what you need. Here are the things that you need. You still get part of what you want, but this is what you need. What do you think? Now, ultimately, we are consultants, right? So normally we're not the ones who get to make that call. A lot of the times strategic HR teams do. But until you're there with a seat at the table, providing that level of direction, coming back with the what you need, I think a lot of HR teams just go, okay, I got that for you.
Yes.
Let's do it. And a lot of those decisions are made in a vacuum, or maybe only create issues in continuity or inequity across the business. There's a lot of pieces that one leader or just one group of leaders or just your CEO might bring that they don't know the full picture, but they don't know what they don't know, but you do. So bringing that kind of consultancy back, I think, is really important.
I need you to raise your right hand for just 1 second and say, I do not know what Ben and George talked about to open the session today.
I do not know what Ben and George talked about in the session today.
One of the myths that we busted to start us off today is HR should stay in its lane. Just stay over there, do your thing, be the policy police, right? They should just stay over there because don't rock the boat, don't stir things up. And so that was so fun to hear you say, stop just deferring, stop just responding to things. That comes back to our big theme of the last year was don't just be reactive, be proactive. Show up and happen to something. Don't just let things happen to you or to your team or to your department overall.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. One more question for you. I'm having so much fun, as you can tell. One more question for you. All right. So I've talked about the coming year, some things that HR should stop doing. All right. I want you to fast forward farther out. Okay. You were looking back at the impact you've had, the legacy that you've had as an HR leader, sometime when Amy is 50 plus years and is okay, I'm hanging it up finally. What do you want your legacy to be?
I think about this a lot. And it's changed over time, I feel, as I get more tenured as a person and also as an HR professional. I think I want to have been authentic, approachable, and to touch human beings as individuals more than I want to be considered a great HR leader with business acumen who was able to assist in the transformation and growth of her business at a scale of X. Like, that's not why I do this. And so I would love to be known as someone who just has touched individuals and who has helped individuals and who has provided some kind of value to them, whoever they might be, but from a personal perspective and a professional perspective.
What I know of you, there are lots of people that could say that number one is already true, right? That they've already been impacted by you in a positive way. I know I can say that I see and respect you and I've been affected by you in a positive way. No. But I know your day job, you are paid to do the second one. So how do you reconcile that tension that those two things sometimes are opposing or sometimes it's hard to have those circles overlap? Anything that you'd share with someone else is, hey, Amy, listen, we do similar work, but I want to be like you when I'm done with this. I want to be able to say I had an impact on the people and then I look back on the relationships and the value there. Anything you'd share with some of those people about how to navigate that?
Yeah, I think sometimes we are business advocates and sometimes we do have to defer to maybe what we don't feel like is doing a service to a particular individual or providing that level of authenticity for an individual or support to an individual isn't something that we could do as a business advocate, for example. I think of neither being mutually exclusive, right? So it's always a little bit of both for me. Oftentimes, though, people are associating that relationship from a personal perspective as providing them with their want and not their needs. You're not actually serving them. We could put our psychology hats on right now.
How many hats you're close to put on? I was looking for a hat.
Right. And so they don't realize that what you're doing is actually serving them, even if it feels contrary to them as an individual. So when you're like, again, what's best for the business isn't always not great for the individual and vice versa, right? So from an HR perspective, I think I err on the side of empathy, equity, inclusion. My brand is accessibility so that people can understand that, and it's honesty. If it feels like I'm going more one way than another and it's impacting my relationship with an individual negatively, or they're not feeling the value there, sometimes that's because they don't understand the why. And I'm very accessible, and hopefully I've helped them to understand that. So further in their career, they'll go, oh, I don't have to take that personally, for example, because I learned from Amy that this is what's actually going on there. And I feel like that is helping people. Even though I had to make decisions maybe that were contrary to individuals. I also feel like everything happens for a reason. And so if I look back on the times when maybe I wasn't able to provide that level of individual support to particular individuals, like everything happens for a reason. Like your lives are on a trajectory and you get to make choices for sure. But philosophically, I feel a kinship to kind of moving where the universe is taking me here as well, and not fighting against it either. I think it gives me, not you, but me, a lot of comfort.
It's a comfort with the word that's coming to mind for me. Yeah.
And especially someone who has to make sometimes really tough decisions a lot. Look,
a hypothetical person that may work in a field that rhymes with human resources. Yes.
Yes. And you're impacting other people's lives, and you've got a lot going on. It helps a lot to be able to justify it with you're making the very best decision that you can in that moment, and you do have consideration for that individual, and you know that you do in your heart. And so even if you have to make a decision that feels contrary to that, you know that you had that as a consideration. So it helps me a lot.
I was coaching a friend who's a manager who had to go through his first termination recently for someone.
Oh, nothing like the butterflies of a first termination.
Afterwards, he was like, listen, my HR person was there with me. It was as painless as it could be. He said, it hurt. I said, that's good. When it stops hurting, you're probably not in the right place anymore. So regardless of what, happened in the situation, whatever else, no one wants to do that decision. And so it should always probably hurt you a little bit. And that just means you're human.
I say the same thing to managers. If it's not feeling uncomfortable, you're not in the right place.
You need a change of heart to get you back around. When I asked you a minute ago, you were trying to stop between two answers. Did you have a second answer that you were thinking of?
Well, most recently, I think there's big myths around AI and the use of AI within business.
No.
Capital perspective.
Okay.
We might be able to thread a little bit into there if you want to go that direction.
Bring it.
All right. So for me, I also love the concept of the increasing value of authenticity in a work perspective, just from an employment environment perspective, and how important it is for leaders to create authenticity with their teams even more than ever, because anybody can write a really great email now with AI.
I want to come back to authenticity, the value of that. I heard from a friend who's a marketer recently, and she said, today, if you've seen marketing that's had human hands on it, then that's a novelty. It's uncommon because so much is just handled by AI now. It writes all these headlines, everything else.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I can see a future where that's the same sort of thing, where if you have leadership interaction, or you have an HR team that is pick up the phone and calling you and checking in because they heard that your mom wasn't doing well. Those sorts of things are going to be novel because people are going to just get so much other things done through AI, essentially.
Your chatbot.
Yeah.
Talk about
So talk about how we can help our leaders maybe see the importance of that or feel the importance of that. Because I think the audience we're talking to here, they're like, yes, Amy, I'm with you. But then they've got to go and convince a leader to say, hey, I know that new AI tool is really cool, but here's what it's costing you to be using that. Yeah, you're saving a little time, but it's costing you this other thing that you can't see right now.
Yeah. There's something really interesting happening right now. So, and from an AI adoption perspective, I think across leadership populations that I'm seeing, and that is that your highly technical leaders who very often are not as great at creating easy sound relationships and communication and things like that. It's not unusual to see that someone who's very highly technical maybe isn't as great at some of those other things. Those individuals are used to leveraging technical tools, which AI is a technical tool. And so you see those leaders, just from even supervisors, picking this up and going, oh, this is so great. I don't have to think about this email that I have to send out. I don't have to think about this report that I send out. I don't have to think as much about putting these slides together as I used to, and analyzing the data as much as I used to. So those individuals are potentially being given the time to develop this new skill set. So from in a transition perspective for me, I've already had a few of these conversations internally for myself, but I've also been talking to my colleagues about this. Suddenly they have airspace. They have no excuse that if you explain to them that authenticity is now a commodity, and that supervisors who have the ability to develop these relationships and these personal dynamics within the business with their individuals will be the ones that are creating a more productive workforce, you can say, hey, and you've given yourself space to be able to learn these things and to become accountable for these things. But what it also does is level up the playing field for those individuals who had the opposite, who were really great communicators, really great with people, not super great with the data, not super great with data analysis, right? It gives them clear space to go, oh, well, now I don't have to be technical anymore. This is where HR fits in a little bit here too, because usually you'll find less technical expertise in HR leadership. Usually, not always the case. Yeah, don't want to paint everyone in the same box. But it's really interesting to have those conversations with those individuals. I have a technical leader right now within my business where they're struggling with the human connection with their team because they were an incredible principal architect, incredible leadership skills. They were promoted because they were an incredible technician, right? And that happens to a lot of us from a coaching perspective a lot. But when we sit and talk about, like, you with AI now, you're now set at a standard where everybody else is set at the same time. You have to get better at this. You can't hide behind your technical skill set, even as a leader anymore. You have to develop that authenticity, and you have to develop that communication skill. And that's what will set you apart now, not that technical expertise, because everybody else is going to have access to that data and be able to look at it in a very similar way to you doing so now.
We talked a minute ago about even HR leaders having a range of different types of expertise. You don't know this. I haven't mentioned this publicly anywhere, but that's what the next book is about. The next book I'm writing is around those different
layers. It just makes so much sense, Ben.
Like, Amy gave me the idea. No, that's what it's going to be around, is what are those deep-seated strengths that each of us have as our leaders, and what does that draw us to? What does it set us up to do? And what are the things that we need to be aware of if we're going to step into something outside of that bubble? Doesn't mean you can't be a recruiter, right, or a benefits manager or something else, but you need to know ABC is going to be true if that's the case. I want to ask you a question. We're here. We are at the very end of January. We're kicking off a whole new year, and I've got my magic wand here somewhere on the desk, and one of the kids moved it. But we can wave a magic wand, wish something for the new year for all of our friends in HR, many of them listening in today. What is your wish for them?
I'm going to go really simple here. I'm going to say, know your value. I'm going to say, understand how important you are as an individual, and take that in, realize it, let it motivate you to achieve your own goals, both from an HR perspective, but just from a personal perspective as well. You're important. What you do is important. Who you are is important. And don't undercut that. And don't let anybody else do that either.
Don't ever say, I'm just an HR manager. I'm just whatever. Don't do that, because you are so much more. So much more. I love that, Amy. Goodness. I knew you'd bring something positive and happy and wonderful to finish this. We had a technical conversation. We're talking, like, we're weaving through all the technology, everything else with, listen, you have to be real. You have to be a real leader. You have to care about culture. You have to care about these things. We're in a world where for a while, it was like not cool to say, hey, I'm an HR because I actually care about people. It was like, no, you can't say that. You can only be a business person. You know what? The best teachers aren't just really good instructors. They really care about their students. I've seen that with my own kids. I've seen that when my wife was a teacher. I've seen that play out. And I think it's the same thing here for HR leaders. And as you said, like, you've got to make sure know your value, care about yourself, make sure you're in a good place, and you can pour into other people once you've done that.
Agreed.
All right, Amy, if someone wants to connect with you, learn more about the good stuff that you're doing, hear more about isolved, who you work for, what's the best way for them to do that?
Come and visit us on LinkedIn. We're happy to connect with you. I'll connect with you on LinkedIn. And also check out our website, isolvedhtm.com. It's a great place to find great HR best practice and technology best practice. And you can see me there, and all my contact information is on there as well.
Tremendous. Thank you again so much for joining me. I appreciate you always. You always bring some passion, some excitement, some fun thinking around how we can push the boundaries of what's possible with HR. And I appreciate you for that.
Oh, I appreciate you as well, Ben. Thank you.
Absolutely. To everybody else out there, hope you got some good takeaways, some good ideas here from Amy. Know your value, know your worth, right? Authenticity matters more now than ever. We'll both agree on that one. And to the rest of you, stay tuned for more good stuff coming right up. Oh my goodness gracious. All right, let's flip that. There we go. Goodness. I love Amy so much. You all know that. I put on LinkedIn. For some reason, our LinkedIn comments are not coming into StreamYard for us to put here on screen. So if y'all are there on LinkedIn, we see you. We just can't bring you into this. So we're trying to be at all the places. But I put on there, Amy's my spirit animal, George.
Amy is just so, I had to jump in and talk to Amy just to say hi prior to your conversation. There's something contagious about her joy, her laughter, her spirit, her energy it's a beautiful thing. I always think whenever she's about to laugh, just buckle in and strap in, because she's about to give you some truth bombs after that laughter. It's like a soften up. She's a true HR at its heart. The laughter is like so empathetic and joyous that it just makes you want to open up, and then boom, here's your reality check.
Here's the truth. Yes. I told you it was going to be funny when she brought that up. I was like, hold on a second. I need the audience to know that you didn't have, any sort of forewarning that I was going to talk about, or George is going to talk about staying in your lane as an HR professional, because that came up in the conversation. So again, She and I had a blast. Lots of good ideas, lots of fun in there, but lots of good ideas as well. I appreciate her finishing up with, of all the things we could talk about, don't limit your value. Don't see yourself as less, right?
You're more than a title. You're more than a title.
Do you know my favorite definition of humility? It's not thinking less of yourself, just thinking of yourself less often. Like, there you go. Like, you're still worth something. It's just, let's make sure that we're wrapping everybody else in. From your HR perspective, we do a lot of that day to day.
Hey, okay. Make sure everybody, before you jump, you're about to jump right in the next one. We do have a QR code up right now. So if you want to connect with isolved, there's a QR code on the screen right now that you can scan. You'll be able to connect with isolved on LinkedIn and all that good stuff. So.
Good stuff. Yes. Thank you again, isolved, for supporting summer school. They've been our title sponsor for like 3 years now, George, I think. And we appreciate them so much. They're always open for fun ideas. I'm wearing my summer school shirt that Jill and our team put together with the blessing of isolved. It's got like, I have to turn around at some point and get a picture on our back, because it's got a good logo of theirs on the back and everything else. And it says, listen, 20,000 HR professionals can't be wrong, right? So many people have funneled through summer school over the years. All right. Enough chitter chatter. Let's get into our next session. So I love to talk with Amy about some of the broad things that are changing. I'm going to talk with Jack Cooper from Take Command in this next session around benefits specifically. We're going to get into nitty gritty, the details there, but for the purposes of talking about how some of the things we believe probably may not be true anymore, especially with some of the recent changes around legislation for benefits. So again, we're going to get into some like nitty gritty stuff here. Hang with us. We're going to get some good ideas out of it. And George, I want to look for you to have some comments after we're done here around what you thought from Jack's session. So I think his first thing he's going to talk about as a myth is going to be the one that you love most. I'll have to wait and see if, here we go. Jack Cooper from Take Command. And welcome to the summer school session today. I know that you are excited about having summer school in January of all the times of the year, and we're having a blast here. I am loving talking to some amazing people about some of their different specialties and their areas of expertise. And Jack is here with me from Take Command. We're going to be talking about benefits and flexibility and personalization and how you can take control and take command of some of the things that you're trying to do there and not just feel like you're at the mercy of that. So, Jack, welcome. I'm glad you're here with us.
Ben, thank you so much for having us to summer school in the winter. Super excited, as you said, to talk not only to admins, but to you benefit admins out there. Some of you wear multiple hats and do it all. Others, you get this benefit admin hat or helmet, whatever it could be, and excited to talk with you today.
I've never stopped to think about a different helmet. You already talked about
You got to be ready.
There's
rocks, there's blasts all over. You got to be ready for it.
The work we do in HR, you probably need to have different helmets for different things. That's actually a really
helmet.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. So that's going to be like, we'll have to figure a shirt out for that. For all of you out there, I love to make a shirt about something. We'll have to figure out how to make a shirt about the different helmets you wear in HR. So, Jack, before we get into some of the fun stuff we're going to talk about today, would you take a minute and tell the audience more about who you are and what you do, please?
Thanks, Ben. So I'm Jack Hooper. I'm the CEO of a company called Take Command. So we help small employers with a new form of medical insurance and benefits. We'll get into that a little bit, but we've seen all the ups and downs and, like I said, the need for helmets when you're trying to provide a service and take care of your employees. That's my day job. By night, I'm a dad of 3. I've got twin boys that are 12 and another son that's 9. So all boys, so lots of fun, lots of broken things, lots of sticky things. I'm also a big user of the healthcare system. My youngest son is special needs. So he's doing great, but I've haggled and argued with every insurance company you can possibly imagine. So I've got my professional day job arguing with insurance companies and then my personal life arguing with insurance companies. So know how to get that done from both sides. And then been married for going on 17 years now, and I think thankfully all good there.
Awesome, cool. Well, we're just ahead of you. We're 18, about to be 19 years for us, married, and then also a twin dad. So there is that. So we've got all these fun connections there.
Probably another helmet for that. But
You know what? Goodness, we'll have to talk offline about that one because there are some stories. I was going to say you probably got. With 3 boys, you probably got some fire extinguishers around the house too. Just
fire helmet.
Of all the things that you could be doing, I mean, you could be spending your time doing a lot of different things in your life. Why the benefit space? Why is that what you're spending your time and your effort and your energy on?
It's a great question, Ben. My previous career actually was in intelligence. So I used to be cool. Now I'm even cooler. I'm in the healthcare space, right? For me, though, it really was a passion project. I mentioned my twins when they were born. They were a huge blessing, but an even bigger surprise. And to give the short version of my story, the way I got into it was just trying to figure out, all right, what are twins going to cost? Like I just started grad school, just moved across the country. I had to get student loans to pay for the twins. That's how responsible I was at that point in my life. And I just needed a ballpark. Are they 5,000? Are they 500,000? What am I going to have to pay the hospital? And it's really my personal journey of, like here I am with a blessing, right? I'm twins.
Agonizing
a lot
over
of people are dealing with cancer or tough stuff and not having any visibility or opportunity to even understand this market. It's like, there's got to be something better. There's got to be better tools, better ways to equip employees, individuals, as well as HR managers and leaders. And that was really the spirit of Take Command. Was it started as a personal project, just figure out how much in grad school loans do I need to pay for twins, and then that's grown into where we are today. But it's twisted and turned a little bit, but maintains that same ethos and spirit of, hey, let's peel back the onion of this healthcare system, which is complex, and let's deliver something simple and straightforward that employees will love and employers will love. And so far, so good. It's been working. Yeah.
All I could think of is when number 3 came along for us, we paid for all the deductibles and stuff for him to be for my wife's maternity care. And then her company changed insurance plans and we had to pay again. And so I tell him that he is my expensive baby because
Your
Yeah.
your twin deductible baby. Yeah.
Basically, yes. He came after the twins and somehow cost just as much as
Or
all. So there we go. All right. So for everybody else out there, they've already heard a little bit from me and George about some of these myths about work. And it's my goal today to help everybody think differently, right? We're doing this at the beginning of the year for a reason, not just to give people some inspiration, but some ideas and things. And so what I'd love to hear from you is I would bet there are some myths around benefits, around how companies are managing those, around the way they're offering that to their people. What are some of the myths that you and your team see when it comes to the benefit space and how companies do that right now?
Ooh, good question. There's a few myths out there that I think are important to dispel. The first one is that, hey, we've got to get on a bigger group plan to try to save money. We get where that myth comes from. That's been the status quo for decades in this country. And the idea of getting health benefits, what's going on in the background, right, is insurance companies, they love selling group benefits because it allows them to assess risk, and they can look at a population and they can use your employee group as kind of the underwriting unit and say, hey, if you've got 10 employees or 100 employees or 1,000, we can wrap our arms around that. And if everyone participates, we know that we'll get enough healthy people to offset the ones that need more health care. But there's this big rush. When you think benefits, people think, I got to get on the group health plan. And the reality is, like, that model is just not working. So if you look at history over time, we're seeing group premiums go up 8 to 15% every year for the last 8 years. So that can be a beatdown when you think, hey, I'm trying to herd everyone together on a group plan, and that's going to help us negotiate and save money. That's true if you're Walmart. But I have a feeling most of our audience here today is not Walmart or American Airlines or something like that. The reality is, if you're a 50 life nonprofit or a 100 life software company or a 2 life dental firm or accounting agency, you can try to negotiate with your local hospital and try to get those group rates to bring things down, but it's just not going to happen. So that's the first myth, is don't run with the herd into the group plan. History shows it just does not work. The second myth, I think, is really kind of around the opportunity of helping people, especially HR, understand what's out there now. There's a lot of great brokers out there that want to sell you a lot of things that's really great for the broker. There's a lot of great brokers that want to sell you things that's great for you and your employees. One of the most common ones we're seeing now are these defined contribution arrangements. So people need to know there's some new rules that went into place in 2020 that allow employers now, instead of trying to cobble together the group health plan, can actually give employees money tax-free that they can then spend on their own individual insurance. And people say, well, hold on, wait, individual insurance, I've heard it's crappy, I've heard it's terrible. In some markets, yes, but in most markets, people will be really surprised when, oh my gosh, hey, there's the same plan that I was gonna buy as a group, I can buy the individual version of it and it's 20% cheaper. Like, why is that? Like, how is that? And then for my employees that actually want to go to a different doctor or use a different system, now they have some choice and flexibility. So the beauty of it is that employers can just give money, employees can pick the plan they want that has their doctors and prescriptions, and it kind of takes, we're all at Ben helping admins, HR admins do their job better, but in a weird way, it kind of takes you out of the benefits business. So you get to give a benefit and then step back, which is a huge relief to a lot of clients. And I share that because a lot of brokers will tell you, myth number 2, that, oh, the only thing you can do is get on a group plan or join this PEO or this self-insured thing. There is another option, and it's way simpler, and it's way cheaper, and it's way more effective. And that's just giving your employees money for insurance and letting them buy their own.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I want to go back to one of the things you said there around giving them the choices and giving them the options there. One of the things that we see pretty consistently in the research is when we ask the workforce about flexibility, one of those top 5 is the benefits that I can access and any choices around that. And so I'd love to hear from you, why do you think benefit choice is valuable when it comes to workers and their families?
It's a great question, Ben, and there's some things really kind of pushing it. One is just the rise of remote work. A couple of years ago, Yes, there was remote workers. That's always been a thing, but now more and more employers are dealing with it. And as an HR admin, even if you're a small employer group with 10 employees, I bet 5 years ago, you were all in the same town or same city, or at least the same state, right? Where you could get this kind of group benefit and you know that, all right, everyone generally likes this hospital or this. I bet now if you're a 10-person employer group, you've got a few people here, a few people in 5 states over, all over the place. The burden that we see a lot of HR admins wearing to try to figure out, okay, what's going to be good for this new salesperson we just hired in Minneapolis, and our tech developer in California, and our salesperson in Texas. Like, how in the world can I buy something for them when I, the admin, am responsible as the buyer of health insurance, right? I got to pick out the Blue Cross plan for everyone. And I got to hope that nationwide it's gonna fit and have good coverage. Maybe there's really good coverage in some states, and in others it's no one takes that plan, right? So that's where we really love the flexibility of, hey, look, you got a distributed workforce. Let's give them money and let's let them buy in their local market. So if your employee in Minnesota really loves a certain hospital, you don't even have to know that. You don't have to think about that. That employee can take care of it. And then, hey, we see in California a lot, some employers and some employees love Kaiser Permanente, others hate it, right? Why would you make that choice as the admin? Give them the money, and if employees love Kaiser, great. If they don't have to. The other thing we're seeing, Ben, along the lines of flexibility and choice, is increasingly seeing more Gen Z entering the workplace. As a older upper end millennial, it relates to a lot of Gen X. Hey, we've always looked at benefits as, oh, well, that's something my company gives me, right? I start at a job and they hand me a piece of paper and I check if I want the high deductible plan or the low deductible plan, and that's it, right? The reality is Gen Z sees that as almost kind of overbearing. Wait, why would you,
Jack?
Yeah, why would you tell me what I want, right? That doesn't make any sense. So when we do surveys with employees and with clients, we see the generational divide very strong, where, hey, Gen Z and some of these younger generations in the workforce, they don't want you to pick that out for them. They want you to give them the benefit and let them decide what to do with it.
That makes like personalization by default almost, where they get some choice.
I think you got to be there as an HR. I mean, if you're looking ahead or if you're hiring a lot of Gen Z. The other place where we see it be really successful is if you've got employees that are kind of mixed statuses. So if you're kind of the homogeneous employer with 50 employees all in one city and roughly the same demographics, like we call them the one size fits all group plans, like that may work for you, right? And you may be able to work with a broker and they can help you find a deal on it. But if you've got a mix of generations, or a mix of like full-time and part-time, or hourly and salary, maybe you've got a full-time sales force and some hourly warehouse staff, trying to get that one size fits all plan is going to be really hard, because the full-time staff's going to want the PPO premium plan, and that's going to price out the warehouse workers, and then only the sick ones are joining. And then, that calculation we talked about is starting to spiral down and things are going up, and versus just saying, hey, look, let's give X dollars to our full-time staff and Y dollars to our hourly staff. As an HR admin, now you're out of having to worry about that, and your employees are all going to get a better deal.
One of the things I was thinking about as I was prepping for this today is I get a chance to chat with you. You're a CEO. You're thinking about how you're taking care of your own employees, how you're taking care of your own family. You mentioned this at the outset, right? I would love to hear from you. How does a CEO see the benefits that their companies are offering to the people?
It's a good question, Ben. And I'll answer it the other way. As a CEO, I'm one of those CEOs that's not very good at finance. So thankfully I've got a good CFO that helps me with that stuff. But, we see CFOs have increasing stress over the benefits, right? Because, hey, every year it's up 10%. 15%, 12%. And it feels like this out of control line item that my CFO is great. Like he's an Excel nerd wizard. Like he wants to understand where all the money's going and predict into the future. And as the CEO or HR person, it's like, well, I can't tell you what the benefits are going to cost next year until we get the quote and we go through it. And then we got to raise the deductibles and pare it down. And it feels you get stuck in the middle where you're trying to appease the CEO, CFO, and keep costs under control. At the same time, you're trying to take care of your employees, but you're just having to raise deductibles or something like that, or push premium through to them. So again, what's nice about this defined contribution approach is it really allows you to go to your CEO and CFO and say, hey, look, here's the amount, here's what it's going to cost. And then you can turn around your people and say, hey, here's what you're providing. Let's go get you the best thing that's going to meet your needs so that you're not worried in this kind of like push-pull tension. Back to your question, though, you asked as a CEO how I feel about it. I think benefits are so key. One of our core values, I imagine a lot of folks have a similar core value around people first, right? And I know that to get the most productivity out of my people with my kind of greedy capitalist CEO hat on, I need everyone well at home. I need everyone, if you're going to be sick, great, stay home, but I need you home for 1 or 2 days, like not a week, right? And that's where healthcare, the value and the ROI is there. Plus recruiting and retention, we've seen the value and the power at our own company, as well as working with clients where, hey, just offering something can be such a retention boost, can be such in a competitive market, can be such a draw for applicants. So we see benefits really as a strategic advantage, but you got to be thoughtful of it. You don't want that runaway thing on the balance sheet that the CEO and CFO are always going to be stressing about. How do we make this a strategic advantage to love your people, take care of your people, but also love your CFO and your CEO and keep things under control?
I can imagine right now that George is probably smiling big because you used the L word there. We talk about that. That comes up on summer school for some reason, but I never hear it on other events. So we do care deeply about our employees. Dare I say, we love them. We want them to be well. We want them to do well, as you said, right? It's not just about squeezing productivity out of them, but I want them to be well. They're a better person when they are. They're a better contributor to their community, to their family, and here in their job. And so we want them to be well. And I love that answer there. So, as we're getting closer to the end here, one of the things I wanted to ask you to sort of wrap us up, you had this unique perspective where you're talking to a lot of these HR leaders, benefits administrators, all these sorts of things on a regular basis. What is one of the biggest complaints that you hear from those people when they're talking about the benefits they're offering? Because they're showing up because they have a problem typically. What is one of the biggest complaints or problems they're talking about?
Ooh, there's 2 that really come to mind. One is the constant premium increases, and they're being asked by their CFO, right, to raise deductibles or something to balance out the costs. And we see HR leaders, like you said, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place of loving their employees, but having to meet numbers. And that is a very frustrating place to be. The second thing we see is HR leaders that it's with good intentions or out of necessity, but they've become the go-to conduit for their employees to the insurance companies. And now they're having to argue and haggle and handle all these things. We see those 2 complaints a lot where, hey, we're stuck with these costs and I've got to take care of my employees, but we just can't do it as a business. Or, hey, I'm the HR admin or the benefits admin and I'm on the phone all day taking care of insurance issues or trying to answer employee questions. And I got into HR because I love people, not because I want to be on hold with Blue Cross or something like that for hours and hours a day. So those are the 2 big complaints we see, and where again, there's not a silver bullet, but I would encourage HR admins, if you're on your own, hey, look for other options. And this is where the defined contribution can be a great starting point for benefits. Or if you're working with a broker, hey, push them and ask for other things. Don't let them just keep feeding you the easy group plan with the 12% increases. Ask for alternatives. Ask for defined contribution. The thing we do in particular, I mentioned a new law in 2020. It's called an individual coverage HRA or ICRA. Ask for an ICRA quote and your broker will get you one. And there's ways to address those complaints where, again, you can still love and take care of your employees, but you can also get out of being in the healthcare business, which is a huge sigh of relief to a lot of people.
I was telling someone the other day that of all the things that I did, all the hats or helmets that I wore, pick your verbiage there, when I was an HR leader, I really liked like comp and stuff like that. But on the benefit side, it was just like, I'm not a super in the weeds person. The picture I'm getting here is I get to spend more time on these other parts of HR that I love instead of, as you said, being the hub for all benefits things or being the person who has to be an expert on everything because you're using a group plan and they see you as their first touch point. So we've covered some really good ground here, Jack. If someone wants to hear more about Take Command, the good work that you're doing for your clients, or even, hey, I'm kind of curious how this works to go deeper into the mechanics of it, what's the best way for them to follow up or connect?
I appreciate getting to connect today. Easiest way is takecommandhealth.com. You can see we're a one-trick pony in the benefit space in terms of being able to do this kind of alternative reimbursement methods. We are not overly salesy though. So if you request a quote from us or a design and it's not a right fit, we will steer you back to your broker or point you the right way.
All right. Well, thank you again for all of you out there listening. I'll make sure it's in the chat, but takecommandhealth.com is how you can connect, learn more about what they're doing. There's a really cool map on the website where you can see the states and places where it's best fit. Really cool data there. Data nerd, obviously. So, Jack, thank you again to you and the team for supporting the event today, for connecting in and sharing your passion for this. I really appreciate it. And to all of you out there, stay tuned for more good stuff coming right up. All right. Oh, there we go. All right. George, I told you, like, there's a couple of good comments in there that Jack made. He talked about running with the herd and the challenge around that. He talked about HR needs to have a helmet on sometimes.
I thought he was talking about hats. So I was going over, I'm in my office. I got different types of hats that I wear, sports dad hats, baseball hats. If you're in Indiana right now, you go outside, you need a nice little, nifty hat. But I don't think I can fit my helmet anymore, Ben. And like most case scenarios, there's always a hole in my head. It's just it's not good.
Trouble.
There's a gap in my helmet. He said something, and so let there be warnings. George acronym coming soon. George acronym alert. George acronym alert. When he was talking about running with the herds, and I didn't know which one you're thinking of. But naturally, there's so many different songs that came in my head at first. Now I'll spare everybody my voice that is of an angel, but the angel died. But when I think about the herds, I think about just quick acronym: habit-driven benefits, like what everyone else offers; expectation-led decisions, like industry norms over employee needs; risk-averse thinking. I think Jack touched a lot of this, like value stuff that is just different when it comes to benefits, like. When it thinks of risk-averse thinking, afraid to challenge legacy plans and things of that nature. Don't be afraid of those things. Disconnected value, benefits that look good but aren't used, right? Like the disconnected value, you would just add in some value because it makes it look good. And then S is for stagnant strategies, no evolution as the workforce changes. And so I would say this to Jack's comment of, yes, HR doesn't need to run with the herds. HR should lead. And so, let's lead these things and be able to adapt accordingly. Because I think, as we said last year and previous years, and I think it's your shirt, maybe one size doesn't fit all.
That's right.
One plan doesn't fit everybody, and you got to be able to have opportunities and benefits that are balanced. And I love that opportunity where you have options there.
Yes. There was so much good commentary from the conversation again, I'm watching like 3 different chats trying to be in all the places, and all of you are sharing together. Some of you are talking about, hey, this is interesting. I'm curious about this. And you can scan the QR code. You can reach back out to them. Or if you can't figure out how to reach Jack or someone on the team, just ping me or George. We'll help you get connected there. But they're doing some good stuff, and it's worth taking a look. So thank you all for that so far. Look at this. All right. I'll pop this up really quickly because George, I'm going to ruin it, but we're ahead of schedule a little bit, and that doesn't normally happen. So I think I gave us a little extra buffer more than usual. So our next conversation is with Ken from HiBob. So Ken and I have talked. We were at summer school last year talking about some different things around culture and what companies can do to measure outcomes, improve the value of HR. And in this conversation, we're talking about some of the things that Amy and I actually touched on briefly around how AI is changing some of that trust connection at work and how some of the work itself is being done is changing. And so we'll get into some of that piece there that I think is really intriguing, really helpful for us to be thinking about, because this is a fundamental change. I was on a session this morning with a friend and I said, people keep talking about all this AI stuff like it's a light switch you turn on or turn off. And it's so much more than that. It's a human change fundamentally, not a technology change. And we are the experts in humans at work. So let's jump into this conversation with Ken, hear from him, and then we'll wrap up with the final discussion with George and Prejean, and we'll do some giveaways and all that good stuff. We've already got like a bunch of people tagged for giveaways in the comments already. Please continue those. Remember from earlier, I said, hey, if you're listening to a session, like, here's a myth, throw that myth in there. We've already tagged a bunch of the ones that I saw earlier, but if you have another one, please throw it in and we'll continue on. So with that said, let's jump into a conversation with Ken from HiBob. Everyone, so excited to be here with you today, and we've had some great conversations already. I'm so excited to be joined here by a friend, fellow nerd, researcher, just all around good guy, Ken Matos. We're going to be talking about some of the things that he is seeing over at HiBob as they're doing some research on the workplace, the workforce. He and I love comparing notes on the research. Ken, welcome. So glad you're here.
I'm always glad to chit chat with you, Ben.
It is always a blast. We always go down some fun rabbit holes and sometimes discover something that's actually useful for people. I mean, there's always a benefit to that. So before we get into some of the fun things you're going to be talking about today, it's about AI, some of their myths, entry-level work, other things. Take a minute and tell the audience more about who you are and what you do, please.
Absolutely. So I'm Ken Matos. If you haven't seen me, I am the director of the Insights Lab at HiBob. I oversee our team that is focused on understanding the world of work, what's happening, why it's happening, where it's going, and enabling our customers and my colleagues to better adapt to that changing world.
Awesome. So we're going to get into some good things here from that, some things you're seeing. Actually, for the audience's benefit, some of these things are actually coming out very soon. You had told me before we started recording. So they're getting a sneak preview of some of those sorts of things, which is exciting. So in keeping with the theme of the event today, we talked about some of the different myths and things that we're seeing. One of the ones I wanted to start off with is we've been told for a very long time, hey, don't worry, AI is going to do all the work that nobody else wants to do, and we'll be doing better work, more strategic work, other kinds of things that are kind of fluffy and not very well defined. But as we're already starting to see, there are some impacts. AI is taking over and impacting work that entry-level workers are doing, for example, in some serious ways. Would you take a minute and talk about what that looks like?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. So one of the starting assumptions of the AI revolution was that knowledge was going to be worthless. If you were an experienced employee, all that knowledge would go into the AI machine, and then somebody who is fresh out of high school would just query it, get an answer, and do your job. And the exact opposite seems to be what's happening. Because I think one of the things that people get wrong about AI is they think about it the way they think about like a Google search, where it is a reference tool. And so it pulls up the exact information. AI is much more like memory. It constructs what it gives you at the moment that it gives it to you. And that means it will always have some degree of hallucination baked in, unless it has a very refined control mechanism and data set. And so what ends up happening is your experienced employees are actually a bit more valuable because they can see what is good quality, where there's a hallucination, just go and fix it, and then move on. And so AI became more valuable as a speed tool to the experienced than a learning tool to the inexperienced. So what we're seeing in some of the data is that companies are leaning into hiring more 2-year plus people than right out of college. There's this weird about 2 years-ish moat that is surrounding the workplace.
The moat example, I think, is the best one I've heard so far that explains that talks about this weird gap. It's one of those things where we want people that are experienced enough to know when it's sharing a bad idea or sharing a bad recommendation, be able to call it on it or be able to ask a better question. And I was telling someone the other day that the quickest example I can think of is this person that just recently out of school was tasked with this project at work. They were prompting some AI tool, I won't call it out, but asking, hey, what are the FMLA requirements for our company? And it starts going into, well, you do this and this and this. And I said, hey, by the way, you don't actually have to be subject to that because your company is too small to require that. And they're like, oh, no. So they asked a bad question because they didn't have that knowledge, that exposure, that application and experience that you're talking about there, that moat. Like they missed that. They were still on the other side of that. And because of it, they were asking the wrong questions and would have led them down the wrong path if not for me stepping in and just letting them know that, hey, don't do that. So that sort of thing amplified by anyone who's stepping into the workplace, and companies are like, that's a little risky. So let's have someone who's more experienced in this potentially talk about. So let's say the audience is hearing this, and maybe for the first time, they're thinking through the implications of this sort of thing. Why should they care? What's the thing, the aha, okay, HR, here's the thing you need to know and need to go do.
So I think the big issue is long-term pipeline. So one of the things that we saw in manufacturing when it automated was that the skilled labor force became super valuable, even as they shrunk the overall number of people working in manufacturing institutions. And so what ended up happening is they're like, great, we don't need to do learning and development anymore. They cut those programs, they got super lean. And then the prices of those skilled laborers went up because they were now a limited pool that was only getting smaller as people left the industry, as they aged out. And so they started poaching from each other. And so the wages for these roles just skyrocketed. And so now they have to really stop and think, like, how do we get people back in? Oh, wait, everyone has decided that there is no safe future to start out here in this industry. And therefore, the prices stay high even as they try to pull people in. And so if we apply that same logic to the places where AI might move in, if it does make you stop training junior level employees because you don't have a need for them, you won't have people who are actually your higher level employees who can use the platform properly. And so everyone's probably going to do a little bit of a tragedy of the commons. It's not my problem. Someone else will do the education. Eventually you're going to realize everybody's thinking the same way, and so nobody is.
I was trying to think about how to phrase that the other day. Can you give me some good ideas between moats, tragedy of the commons, like these ideas that, well, someone else needs to solve for this because we're just going to ride the wave. We're just going to kind of hide in the middle and assume someone else will solve it. Then we'll rush with everyone else for the solution versus what can we do specifically for us? So for anyone listening in, my recommendation, my hope for you, as you're hearing from Kent, don't quit training people just because you may have them right now at your fingertips. Someone else at some point is going to start trying to steal those away, potentially, based on some of the history we see, some of the trends around that. So be developing, be growing your people, have a plan for internal ability. And as weird as it is, those entry-level people have to get experience somehow, right? They still have to develop that. You can't just wave a magic wand and they're suddenly qualified to do a role that requires 2 or 3 years of experience. All that stuff they're doing hands-on as early career professional. Again, if I'm being honest, Ken, I don't know about you, but if I could go back and someone said, here's an AI tool that will do the grunt work for you, I probably would have given it some of that to do. But looking back now, the ability to build context, the ability to understand these pieces and how they fit together, the ability to know how to navigate a certain situation because I did the little things to build up to the big things, I feel like that's invaluable. But in the moment, I might have said, let's take the easy path because our brains are just kind of wired that way.
Well, we don't learn by just being presented with information. We learn from using it. And so what I really advise organizations to do is look at those tasks that you're like, this is grunt work. Nobody wants to do this. Let's just get rid of it through automation. And be like, but which of these tasks do your more advanced people reference when they're doing the more advanced work? And so like I had to write so many literature reviews in grad school. But now when people are like, Ken, what's the general trend on this? I'm like, the answer is blah, 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 and this is why it matters. And no, that's not the right context to even ask this question in because I had to read all those things. If I had skipped over it and just gotten a lit review that I could hand to my boss, I wouldn't remember any of it. It wouldn't stick. And so I think carving out the specific tasks that people are like, no, in these 2 or 3 areas, I practice so many skills that now allow me to use the AI more effectively. Keep those. Let people do those things, and you will have good pipeline that actually is creating the specific roles you're looking for, rather than just, this is a task that needs to be done, and otherwise I don't care about it.
So I'll play devil's advocate here on behalf of the audience, because some people are hearing this and thinking, well, Ken, that sounds great, but it's hard for me to go to my leadership when they may not feel like this is our problem to solve, or they might not feel like this applies to us as much, or they may feel like, here's the 3 excuses why we don't have to do that. But I know it's important. I feel it in my gut. This is so important. I can see already like the beginnings of this. how do I sell that to our leadership? How do I position this in a way that they're going to want to understand more and potentially, hopefully, support it with budget or something else?
I mean, absolutely. That is the tragedy of the commons. I think what you really want to do is stitch those things into other things that they value. So you might build a role that, like, I do need these things done, but we're also going to make sure that these people who are being pulled in for these lower level roles are also getting access to these tasks that the AI might otherwise do. Or you might say, great, 90% of this work will be done by AI. We'll carve out some time for you to do it in the traditional way that helps you learn. I think we're so focused on just one task equals a job, and that's just not the reality. No one does one thing in their job. And so threading these other things through roles, very explicitly saying this is training for the next level, is what's going to sort of sneak it in past I just need this person justified.
You talked about how people are so many more than just the one skill there. I actually had this talk with someone the other day about from the other side of that, saying, hey, listen, companies are approaching this saying, well, Ken or Ben, it's just a bundle of these skills we're going to rent for some time while they work here, and then they'll eventually move on somewhere else. There's so much more to people than just that bundle of skills. When we look at our data on this, the number one thing the workforce says when we say, how can a company show respect for you? The number one thing is see me for my potential, not just for what I can do right now. And part of the problem with some of these other things is we are only looking at this very specific snapshot of right now and not what can Ken do next and next, especially if we continue with this development path, if we continue with these opportunities are put in there versus, as you said, this sort of negative alternative path that some companies are choosing, saying, we'll only hire people that are perfectly qualified all the time. That's expensive and that's hard. Not as easy as
I think a
sounds.
lot of this has to be anchored in your current market economics. So we go through these cycles of innovation and cost cutting. When we're innovating, we're like, oh, yeah, I need somebody who's going to blow open possibilities. I'm willing to spend on experimentation because I'm trying to get ahead. When we're in scarcity mode, we're like, no, it's all about as little cost as possible. I don't want to invest. I just need to have a lot of liquid resources to deal with potential chaos. And right now we're in that latter phase. And so some of this conversation is really about helping your leaders plan for when we come out of this, or at least when they decide they need to grow again and not just survive. And if they do at least some of that planning now, they'll start growing faster, and rather than waiting for somebody to leapfrog ahead of them. I think also we're just in a weird moment of everybody's in tune with the idea of we just need to be as inexpensive as possible, and productivity is everything. Scale. That's not going to be valuable as AI gets more and more ubiquitous. Scale is easy. That is what AI does. Everyone will have it. There's a great quote from some professors at MIT Sloan saying that AI is not a sustainable competitive advantage because eventually everyone has it.
Mm-hmm.
And once everyone has it, it's not a competitive advantage. It's just a baseline. And so thinking about how you're going to get ahead when adopting AI is no longer the thing, but it's something else. Maybe AI can do it, maybe it won't, but you won't be prepared if everyone distrusts you or you have no one who's flexible and willing to grow because they're already established in a very narrow role.
So it feels like you're leading to an answer there. Like you left that one open-ended a little bit. Is the answer, are people our competitive advantage? Is it that our culture is our competitive advantage? Talk about what you see that being in a world where AI, we snap our fingers, it's everywhere, everyone's using it. What is the competitive advantage for company A versus company B with the HR leaders out there listening in?
The two things that I see as, well, the thing that defines competitive advantage is that it's not easy to replicate.
Mm-hmm.
And so two things that are not easy to replicate are people, because people are all random. Each person is their own unique combination of things. So not only is it the individuals, but it's the combination of individuals that you bring into your organization and how they amplify each other. But it's also the data that you have. A lot of stuff points to the idea that AI is most powerful when it is using custom agents and proprietary data to answer your specific questions. The more generic your AI usage, the more generic your suggestions are, which again goes back to everyone else is getting the same suggestions, so it's not a competitive advantage. And that is the thing that I think everybody's sort of forgetting, that another good example is the value of artisan goods goes up as the scale of the standard Wonder Bread package goes down. And so I'm willing to pay more to get something that feels different and innovative when everything else feels the same. And so we're very much just going through a cycle. And so I would counsel HR people to deal with what's happening today, but continue to lay the groundwork for the moment when it flips, because that's when they're going to go, oh, yeah, you were saying the return to what people do, how they create innovation and artisan value that I can't replicate via AI consistently is back up again. Let's use that. And thanks to you, we're not completely behind. And so I think that's where people should be living.
One of the things you just said there that my brain is spinning in 15 directions right now, trying to figure out the answer to this. I don't know the answer, but you talked about competitive advantage. The first one before the data one that you played into really well, you said not just people, but the mix of people, the specific mix. Do you have the amplifiers? Do you have the people that make the work people, the teams around them more capable, more productive, more satisfied in their work because they're lifters and not someone who's just a drainer that's in there? So I'm thinking about that one a little bit. I'm super curious because that may be the data are going to tie into that, how we see those people and how we understand that, because right now we probably couldn't pick out more than a handful of those, but they may exist in your business. We just don't know who they are at this point.
Absolutely. I think you raised two other things. One, I think you gave an example of that when you were talking about the FMLA piece. Like the fact that the person had you to look at the stuff and go, wait, you're under 50. Like the AI is tricking you. Yep. Is an example of having the right team. They knew how to do all the other stuff, but they didn't have a colleague to say, wait, what's going on? They would have just moved forward. And so that's an example of having the right collective to get to the correct answer, even though AI was right there in the middle of it. And so I think that's a thing to keep in mind as we think about what is it that we're looking for. It's not just interpersonal interactions, but it's like, how do they amplify each other's work and improve where they're going?
Mm-hmm. I don't remember her name off the top of my head. I cannot remember her name. Wonderful lady from the Mayo Clinic. We talked about, she's the head of leadership selection. Had a great conversation with her about how they pick leaders. And she said, we learned over a decade ago, she said, we couldn't pick the one who's the superstar, who wanted the spotlight, because they may be good in their domain, but they cost something else in the people around them. We hire someone who doesn't really care about the spotlight unless it's shining on someone else that they work with. Like they want to make sure that other people get the glory, get the benefit, get the joy of that. And those leaders are more well respected. They produce more as a team, maybe not individually, but as a team that produce better results. And she said, that's so much better for us. It's less costly for the business, all the things. So some really good stuff here. I know we're drawing close on time, but as we mentioned earlier, some of the things that you talked about today, there's some new research coming out from the team. Y'all continue to publish that and share that out. Again, you and I love getting a chance to nerd out on it. Where's the best place for them to sort of stay in touch with HiBob and the good stuff that y'all are putting out there on a regular basis?
Absolutely. hibob.io is the place to come and find our stuff. We're going to be putting out a research report very shortly about where people's time is actually going around making people decisions. You'd be surprised how much goes to defending the decision you made, not just making it. And in a couple months, we're putting out a study on AI skills and specifically what people in different markets think are the AI skills you need, trying to get below generative AI, but really break that down to meaningful stuff, as well as like how much you're going to have to pay for those skills. So keep an eye on our website for that info.
hibob.io. Make sure that gets into the chat here so people can check that out. Ken, thank you again for your passion for this, for the light you're shedding for the community on these important topics. Continuing to blaze a path there. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, back at it, George. So many good comments there from Ken. Anything for you that was your favorite or a standout or a theme, or did you come up with an acronym while we were waiting? What's the deal?
You know, I think it's the one that you sent me. And so I must steal it. I know that we were talking about, you know, how we can really explore on the comment, but you sent me a message that Ken actually made but not just having the right people, but having a mix of people and having the right mix of people. I think of the Energy Bus book I read a while back about this. It's our job as leaders to get the right people on the bus. The second step of that is to get the wrong people off the bus. And then you put the right people in this mix in the right seat on that bus. And I think that's so important. And I think about how that really impacts even in AI, a lot of the AI conversations. There's so many different types of AI and agents and so on and so forth. And there's something else coming. There's AI stress. There's AI fatigue. but how do we put all the right things that this technology can be good for in the right seat of your company and your organization? Because this whole replacement mentality, that fatigue and stress needs to be calm to where, how do I place this AI tool in the right seat for my company organization, especially in HR and the different opportunities that are there to essentially make some of our jobs easier.
Well, I feel like I've heard you say it before, George, about being a lid lifter, right, for others. And that's what I pictured when Ken was talking about was who is up there lifting that. What is the higher level of excellence we can achieve because we have the people around us that are helping us to get that versus like I'm picturing the one like scrambling up the ladder and stepping on everybody else, like trying to get to the very top first. Like this isn't a game show, people. This is life. And we need to be working together to get those things done. And so I'm super curious about the idea that Ken shared there around having the right mix of people. Because I think about when I used to coach leaders like you, George. Hey, I've got a great team. It's all working well. All 4 direct reports get along. I want to add one person to the team and they need to do this thing, but everything else I want to remain the same. I'm like, listen, when you bring a new person in, all 4 of those dynamics that are there and existing right now are going to change. All 4 of those relationships that between those people or among those people are going to change when you bring someone new in. It doesn't all stay the same and just throw an extra person in. That's not reality. And so we've seen that ourselves when we add one more kid to a house with 4 kids. We're like, wow, we didn't see all those changes coming. Those things surprised us. And because you can't always predict what's going to happen with humans. And so I'm curious about how we can look at that in the research and understand more about what the right mix of people is to bring out the best efforts in every person, not just 1 or 2 high performers.
Yeah, I think it goes to that. You brought up the lid lifter. I think it also goes to like the importance of knowing your people and, what George needs, desires, and even from benefits. Like it connects to everything. George may be different from a completely different world than Ben, and our needs are different. And so I think one of the greatest skills that we can have as leaders and HR professionals is to be able to adapt. There's this old saying that I forget where it came from, Ben, but becoming all things to all people, right? And so being able to meet people where they are, meeting them where their needs are, and be humbled in those situations, and understand that not everybody comes from the same environment, household, and or family style. And so that impacts a lot of different things. And as you said, it impacts the dynamic of your house, in a sense, your organization as well.
Yes. All right, man. I'm enjoying this so much. If I'm going to go ahead and make a guess based on the comments and the feedback and just the flow there so far, all of you in the discourse are having a blast out there in the discussion boards and so on. So in the threads. So we have one last session. George, I'm going to challenge you in the next 20 minutes or so as this session's running to get us some people out of this list we've already started for comments to grab us some names for some giveaways. We're going to give away towards the end. We're going to come back together. We'll look through some of the comments and things we've seen today. We'll share some of those back, the most impactful ones that we saw, some of the myths that you all contributed. So this is your last chance. You want to do that in the next 20 minutes or so. Any myths that you think need to be mentioned as part of this bigger conversation today that need to be busted around work, the workplace, HR specifically, any of those sorts of things. And then we'll get into our wrap up for the day. We may finish a few minutes early, give you some time back in your day because we care. All right, George, let's get this great conversation going between you and Prejean and hear what she has to say about mental health, burnout, some of the things that you teased on this morning as being an individual problem. Don't worry, that's just a you problem. That's not an us problem. We'll find out in a minute whether that's true or not.
Right to this great session, and I am excited. I'm George Rogers, of course, and we have such a great time with this conversation. Introduce yourself, my friend.
Hello, everyone. My name is Prejean Andrews. I go by Prey for short. I go to church and pray. I
I'll
am
do that.
from Savannah, Georgia. So I have beat the snowstorm, thankfully. I have been in human resources for 18 years. Currently, I am the regional employee experience manager for Yancey Brothers Co., which is the nation's oldest Caterpillar dealer. Go Yancey. Since I've been in human resources, I have had a wealth of experience in a lot of different areas within HR, but I am most passionate about the employee experience, cultivating a culture that employees actually want to work in, because we spend most of our time at work. So it's pretty important that they like the environment in which they work. And so that's something that I'm super passionate about and committed until I no longer work in HR, ensuring that employees like where they work. So that's a little bit about me.
We talked a little bit earlier, Prey, on the back end before we start recording about some of the passions that we have. I want to talk a little bit about what I know you're passionate about before we get into this, the mental health aspect of that. Can you talk a little bit about why that's important?
Absolutely. So the thing is, we are whole beings. We're not able to compartmentalize when things happen outside of work. And so it's important that employees are able to be their full selves and still be able to come to work and give 110%, which is not always possible when they are experiencing things outside of work. And I have to tell you a quick story. The reason why I'm so passionate about this: probably about 10 years ago, I was working for a company in similar situation where I was regional. And so with that being said, I went to certain buildings at certain times. And on this particular day, my last building of the day, about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I walk in and the manager says to me, "Oh my gosh, Pray, I'm so glad you're here. Employee A has been crying all day." And so I thought immediately to myself, it's 3 o'clock. You let her cry all day? And I had to think and realize that he is a manager. He's not a counselor. So he wasn't equipped to have this conversation with this young lady. So when I pulled her in, she shared with me that she had recently been diagnosed with PTSD. She is a veteran. In addition to that, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Her mom had recently been diagnosed with cancer. And she also had a fur baby, and the fur baby was going to have to be euthanized. And that was a huge issue because her fur baby was her last attachment to her cousin who had committed suicide the year before. So when you thought about all these things that had hit this young lady at work, we could not expect her to report to work and work effectively when she has all these other things going on, just this whirlwind of things going on. And so it was at that moment that I realized how important mental health in the workplace was, and ensuring that not only we provide resources to employees, but also we equip managers to be able to have those conversations, or at least be able to have a conversation enough to get the employee the resources and assistance they need without pushing that person over the edge. So
We're also knocking at the door like burnout, right? And so people use these interchangeably, but they're not the same when it comes to mental health and burnout. Mental health to me is that big umbrella. It's the overall emotional, the psychological, the social well-being. It includes things like anxiety, depression, resilience, stress management, the mood of how to cope with life in general and at work, but also outside of it is the mental health that can fluctuate, but it's always on, in my opinion.
absolutely.
When I think about burnout, it's more specific and it's situational, right? Burnout happens with the lack of resources or recognition for too long, and it typically shows up as exhaustion. Speaking for myself, where physically, mentally, or emotionally, I'm just exhausted. It's a detachment from the work. It's that reduced effectiveness or feeling like nothing you do really matters, right?
Yeah, for sure. So I think one of the first things you'll see, and you mentioned it, it's an emotional detachment. That's the very first thing you'll see. So that manager or HR professional that's typically upbeat, empathetic, wanting to contribute, you find they start to fall back a little bit. They're not quite as willing to collaborate. They're not quite as empathetic and wanting to help. They're quiet in the meetings. But if you don't have those relationships, what you'll then see is just a decline in their productivity, maybe a delay in their response times. You might see some emotional outburst. I have seen managers who become pretty irritable. Some have expressed anger. Some have cried. Beyond that, you actually might start to see where they're taking more time off from work. So you'll see that they start having an influx of mental health crises, whether that's depression, anxiety, from a physical perspective, migraines, brain fog. I actually had a manager who was diagnosed with lupus, and what she was told was that it was induced by stress. So even if you have autoimmune diseases that may not have been diagnosed yet, the stress can trigger those responses. And even with women, it's not talked a whole lot about, but even hormonal imbalances. So stress can trigger the hormones to go all out of whack. One other thing, just an increase in absences and having to take a leave of absence, and then ultimately exits. We've had employees that once they've had enough and they can't balance the workload, they leave. So those are some of the things that you see when an employee is dealing with burnout.
Yeah, you said it so much. I want to point out because I think when we transition, we talked a little bit about the mental health and the burnout. Yeah, I try to keep things simple, right? So simplicity tells me burnout is what happens when the system breaks the person. Mental health is how a person is doing overall. Why is it so important to monitor burnout of managers and HR professionals?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things is because the managers and the HR professionals, they are going to impact the overall company culture. So your employees or the employees are taking the lead of the management. They are setting the example. And so if managers and HR professionals are burnt out, it's going to trickle down in the ways that I just said. So they're not going to be quite as engaged with the employees. They maybe a lack of response time to the employees, which then makes the employee feel like I'm not being heard, as you mentioned before. So not being heard, I'm not getting the support that I need to be effective in my role. And then that will lead to them being disengaged, not willing to speak up or share ideas and things of that nature. And ultimately, they may leave. And so, as a result of them leaving, the company is then losing money. So, it impacts the bottom line. It all is intertwined.
Yeah. You talk about the bottom line. I'm thinking some of our research that we had last year that comes to mind is like the stress driven turnover, you know, how the retention goes, like job stress and burnout have been some of the biggest factors in driving resignations in recent months. And this particular, you mentioned this in your first response, is really about women, right? And how it impacts their, in our research, when it comes to women and the impact of stress and resignations, they were 50% more likely than men to report that their well-being suffered over the last year. And sometimes I think as myself, in the stage when I had 18 retail stores, there was days where I knew I wasn't really busy, but mentally my mind was busy. Physically, yeah. I didn't feel like I was producing a lot, but my people, my team saw George as busy and not somebody who's approachable. And so when you look at that, it's hard to be able to find support as an employee, especially if you're on the front line and you need those interactions to be able to support them. And so what initiatives are best? What are some best practices?
So I think it's two-pronged. There are things that we can do as individuals for ourselves, and then there are things that the company can provide. I want to start with the individual things that we can do for ourselves. And I think the very first thing, I'm going to call it the ABCs of burnout. The first.
I like acronyms.
You like acronyms? So what do you think the A is?
I'm going to say acknowledge. For me, when I think about ABCs, I'm thinking acknowledge, but where are you going with it?
I like that word. That word. It can be used, but I was going to say assess. So assess yourself, assess your workload, as well as how you are feeling in your body. So one, assessing your workload, you need to identify what needs to be done right now versus what can be done later. I think as managers, and I know for myself as an HR professional, when you have so many people pulling on you at one time, there's the pressure of, I got to get it all done and they want it like yesterday, so I have to give it to them like yesterday. The reality is that can't always happen. And so you have to assess your workload. What can I do now? What can I do later? What can I put off until later? What's most important? And then the second part is, like I said, assessing your body. How are you feeling before anybody else knows what you're feeling in your body and if it's being triggered by stress? So are you not getting a whole lot of sleep? Have you been dealing with a migraine for the last 3 weeks? I'll tell you, for myself personally, for probably about 5 or 6 months, actually it's been longer than that now, I was dealing with a pain on the right side of my face. Man, I didn't know what it was coming from. Long story short, it was TMJ. TMJ is triggered by stress. So that's the clenching of your teeth, and not even, or grinding your teeth at night. For me, it was clenching. And when my dentist said, "Do you clench?" And I'm like, "No, I don't think so." He said, "Pay attention to it." And I realized that I was sitting at my desk, literally clenching. So I was doing this subconsciously. So it's those types of things that you need to assess your body, what's going on with your body, and so that you can identify or acknowledge what you have going on, and then what you need to do differently to protect yourself. Because at the end of the day, you cannot be any good for anybody else, any of your employees, if your bucket is empty, if that makes sense. So that's the A. The B is setting boundaries, and the boundaries are for yourself, but boundaries for others as well. And so the boundaries for yourself is identifying what can I do differently and sticking to that. And for example, I had a manager who, he was working literally from probably about 6 or 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. at night. And he was frustrated because he's tired. He's not seeing his family and his children, and he's just frustrated. And so when I asked the question, what can you do differently? He said, "I guess I don't have to be here at 6 or 7 o'clock." Correct. "I guess I could get up in the morning and go to the gym before I come to work." Absolutely. That sounds great. "I guess I can get off at 5 or 6 o'clock, and once I'm home, not send any emails to anybody if it's not an emergency." Correct. And so those types of things I think are really important in helping you to manage your own burnout. And then the C is going to sound a little bit cheesy, but calm your nerves. So as a kid, I don't know if your mom said that to you, George, but my mom used to tell me when I was a kid, calm your nerves. When I would get a little excited, just calm your nerves. And ultimately what that means is self-care, and it's regulating your nervous system. So what can you do to regulate your nervous system? And these are things that I think everybody has heard at one point or another. It's your breathing exercises, your deep breaths. It's meditation, getting still and being quiet. It's being very intentional about what you're putting in your body. I call them the 4 F's. So one F is for food. So eat the colorful things. Your plate shouldn't be brown. Those things help to regulate your system. Also, tying it with food is the supplements. So B12 for your energy, ashwagandha for your stress. Right now, everybody probably needs a little bit of vitamin D because the sun is not out. And those things are going to help you to regulate your system. Another F is for fun. Take your vacation. How many leaders, and I'm sure you probably are guilty of this, George, you don't take your vacation? The company gives you vacation for a reason, not for you to give it back, for you to take time off, go have fun, go spend time with your family and friends, do the things that are going to reinvigorate you. So when you report back to work, you're able to give 100%. You gave me that smile, so that tells me you were guilty of not taking your vacation.
I feel like you're judging me, but you don't know my situation.
This is a judgment-free zone, but I am letting everybody
Observation.
know, like
Observation.
take your vacation.
Yeah.
The other thing too, I would say, get an accountability partner or a coach or a therapist, somebody to help you navigate through this and to hold you accountable. Because the reality is we don't always hold ourselves accountable. So having that person, that little person on your shoulder that's going to say, "Hey, did you do what you committed to?" And those are the things, some of the things that I think you can do from an individual perspective. And then from the company perspective, I think it's really important that companies put things in place that support really what I just said or recommended for individuals. So the 4 F's. So if it's fitness, providing, so like with Yancey, we provide our employees discounted gym memberships. So that's supporting some of the things that they do. The EAP, that provides you with not only therapists, but coaches, whether that's a health coach or a career coach, somebody that you can talk to help you navigate the burnout. Because the reality is sometimes you may not want to talk directly to your manager. So having a coach is a safe space for you where you can say exactly what it is you want to say and not be judged. It truly be a judgment-free zone for you. Some of the other things, I think leadership development as it relates to how to have those difficult conversations, especially when an employee is going through a mental health crisis. And I know the two are different, but when you have a manager who is trying to manage the task that he can only do himself, he's managing these employees that they're multifaceted. So it's their performance, but it's also the things that they're dealing with outside of work that they're bringing into the workplace, and how to have those conversations. That's a stressful situation for most managers. So for example, like the manager who was dealing with the employee that I referenced earlier, he didn't know how to have that conversation. So providing them with the resources to be able to have those conversations, I think is going to be really important. There's something called the mental health first aid. Have you heard of that?
I have not.
So mental health first aid is a training that is provided to managers. Really, anybody can take it, but it equips you to have a conversation. Let me back up. It equips you to identify when a person is in a mental health crisis, but then also how to have the conversation to get them the resources that they need without trying to be a counselor. It's a really helpful tool, and it's something that I recommend all leaders go through, because when you get that call from an employee saying that they are considering self-harm, which I have had managers to experience that, it takes a little bit of the stress off of them because they know how to have that conversation. So that's something else. Also, what's really important, creating a psychologically safe work environment where employees can raise their hand and say, hey, I am feeling overworked. I'm feeling that I am racing towards burnout and I need help. Being able to say that and know that your manager, not only one, has heard you, but two, is going to do what needs to be done to get you the resources or help that you need is really important. At Yancey, we have something called the Voice of Yancey Committee, and it is an employee-led committee where employees come together and ultimately they're looking at the survey results and then coming up with solutions throughout the course of the year. So one of those things may be recovery experiences. Have you heard of a recovery experience before? Yeah.
No, I'm agreeing. Like that sounds
Okay.
interesting and something that needs to be implemented.
A recovery experience is defined by the National Library of Medicine as a non-work activity that creates positive outlooks and restores the employee's energy needed to focus on one's work. So ultimately, it's those things that you can do outside of work that will give you the energy to come back to work. So some of the things that came out out of the Voice of Yancey committee was a regional softball tournament. It seems so simple, but that gave our employees a stress reliever. It fostered fitness, it fostered camaraderie, and they were excited. And we did that. They invited their families, and it was an amazing event. And they were all excited to come back to work. So it's little things like that can make a huge difference. And ultimately, what I'm saying is involving the employees in the solution is really important. You and I can sit in a room across a table and say, this is what we think needs to be implemented for these employees. But if the employee doesn't value it, it doesn't matter. So involving the employee in the solution to help them with the burnout, reduce the burnout, and have work-life balance. So the EAP, which most companies have, but then also targeting those other areas like the fitness, the fun. So for like at Yancey, we actually offer discounted tickets to our employees to concerts. So those are some of the things that I think are super important that will help to navigate the burnout and encourage work-life balance.
Listen, this has been a great conversation. When I think about everything, just to wrap this up, and I'll give you one last thing to close out here. when I think about burnout, and I put myself, a lot of people ask me, George, when was the last time you were an employee somewhere versus working for yourself or working on in a company? And one of those triggers, and I remember it so vividly, of a leader who was struggling. And it was one of those lessons where I wanted to be a leader that was better than this situation for me. And I won't say names or experiences for time's sake, but I'll end it with this: to employees, to the front line, to your team, a leader who is too busy feels no different than a leader who doesn't care, right? To employees. And that's a stronghold for a lot of people, because I believe even in those people who are struggling with burnout, burnout doesn't just exhaust leaders. It quietly starves teams of the time they need. As we wrap up here, what's one last word, and then tell everybody how they can connect with you?
And so although we are required to show up for everyone, we can't show up for anybody if we don't first show up for ourselves. So that would be my closing word: show up for yourself, take care of you. And once you do that, you're able to better take care of your team. And to keep in contact with me, just find me on LinkedIn. It's Prejean Andrews, and I'm based out of Savannah, and I can guarantee that I am the only one on LinkedIn, so I should not be hard to find.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Prejean.
Thank you.
Okay, George, we are on the home stretch here, and it looks like you have changed your clothing. You want to tell us more about that?
Shout out to isolved, our partner here today. We were supposed to be in Charlotte, and I was so excited about being with all of my isolved people, Amy Mosier and Paige and Christy, all these great people at isolved. They're celebrating 40 years, 80s babies. And so I just thought, I'll represent in my house. I'm going to throw myself a little lunch party and virtual by myself with all my isolved people, heroes that are not here. I'm just going to virtually, be a part of the celebration. So shout out to isolved celebrating 40 years. And thank you again for being a partner with us today.
Absolutely. My goodness. That's I think you're winning with the hat, people. They're loving that. It's not a shoe, but you're trying.
Hey, okay. if you haven't noticed, the shoes have been changing every you might have to go back, but here we are, Homer Simpson dunking, little donut shoe there.
The shoe's been changing throughout. So if people have not noticed,
some people have noticed. Some people have noticed.
So George, that's his way to sneak that in there. Sneaking it in there. Okay. So George, we had so many good comments today. We've got time to go through and touch on a couple of those. I've been looking at these, and I will come to the awards or the prizes and things in just a moment. But I wanted to touch on just a couple of the ones that stood out to me. For example, someone talked about HR being the principal's office, being the myth. And I liked Angela's comment. She said, listen, the principal in most schools is kind of the figurehead. They're shaking hands, kissing babies. Vice principal is the one that gets it all done. And so, George, if you're the vice principal around here, you're the one who is the doing the dirty work. And someone's like, that's one of the myths that they think it needs to be broken, because HR is not like that.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's all right.
One of the other ones was from Lee on YouTube. Lee said, one of the biggest myths is that HR people don't need HR. People that are working in this field don't need someone advocating for them, looking out for their needs, making sure they're taken care of. Well, you're in HR, you should be good to go. And again, it goes back to that conversation earlier about people are more than just their job title. There's so much more than that.
People need people too. I think that's one of the biggest challenges, especially just in leadership in general. I know we have HR professionals, but who's showing up? And Prejean said it best. We got to show up for ourselves. Number one, like the greatest leader and principle of leadership is self-leadership. Before you can lead somebody else, you must first lead yourself. And so being able to show up for yourself, but it's very interesting. And I encourage others. I think, having a community around you, having people around you that support you, that understands what it's like to be a HR 1 or HR 1,000. It's important to have a circle of people that can help you hold up your arms when they're tired.
Yeah. Yes. So I want to go back to one of the things that came up in the conversation with you and Prejean, because she was talking about some of the key, specific, tangible things we can do, which I thought was great. Really giving people some ideas on what we can do around that. And one of the ideas that occurred to me as she was talking through taking time for meditation or eating the right things, like those things that we all know we should be doing and we sort of gloss over it and don't always do it. I was reminded of a quote from Henry Ward Beecher. The first hour is the rudder of the day. The first hour is the rudder of the day. It steers the rest of your day. And if the first thing you do is you get up and you check all the negative news and you're like all the comments and everything, all those things. No, the first hour is, let me take a few minutes to be grateful for the things that I have, the people that I have in my life, the opportunities that I have in front of me. Take a moment to do something. Go for a walk. I know you love your morning walks, maybe not when it's like foot of snow or more, but you like your morning walks for that same reason. Do some things to fill your own cup so that later on the day is steered by those things you poured into yourself early on. And I just wanted to give that quick comment. One other bit that came up in there, we're talking about the vacation bit. I was actually telling my kids the other day, so I was guilty of this. I was the HR person that did not take vacation and ended up running up against the cap and losing accruals because there was no more, I couldn't accrue any more vacation. I was losing that. And there's a company that I ran across years ago that I love their story. It freaks people out. So fair warning, this is going to sound super out there, but I think the story behind it is great. So there's a company called Motley Fool. One of the things they do is called a fool's errand. And so they'll get together as a company, do an all hands meeting. At the end of that all hands meeting, they draw a name out of a hat and say, hey, George, you're the fool this time. That means you take the next week off, paid vacation, no warning, no prep, get your stuff, go. We'll see you in 2 weeks. And they're see when you come back, essentially. And it's a way to make sure there's no single points of failure, that no one person is so critical that everything grinds to a halt if they're not there. And it also tells people, hey, listen, we know how important it is for you to unplug, get away, do your own thing. You're more than just your job here, and go pour into those other things for the next week. And we will not expect anything of you or ask anything of you. And again, that's a little bit out there, a little bit crazy to hear, but for them, it's been a great way to make sure people are truly collaborating when they're there, because you never know when your number is going to get pulled and you're going to have to, darn it, looks like I could take a week vacation like on the company's dime and just do it with a smile. Okay. All right, George, any other comments before we jump into some of our prizes and things like that we're going to give away?
No, I would just say, yeah, I love Prejean's ABCs. And as she was talking, it's interesting taking notes of a conversation that you're a part of.
Yes.
But one of the things I think of, and I'll just say this as my inspiration to all the HR leaders, my three ABCs on this year would be A is for availability. Making sure that you're available, not just for others, but making sure you're available to yourself. And Ben, you talked about how I like my morning walks. Just finding some time. It doesn't necessarily have to be a walk. Find a closet, find a room where it can just be you, but being available to you, especially when calendars are full and attention is fragmented and teams are deprioritized within the workplace and there's so much going on. Be available, because leaders who are physically present but not meaningfully accessible is a cause for burnout. It's a cause for people to say, I don't feel connected. I don't feel a sense of belonging. The B is for men with cognitive and emotionally capacity is depleted. Like we talked about this so many times, and it would happen today in a conversation. Who's filling your cup? Like you can't pour from an empty cup, or a leaky cup for that matter. And so, being well-intentioned, because sometimes as leaders, we lack that energy to coach, to listen, and to follow through at times. And so what's your bandwidth? Know that, and know when it's getting low. And again, that's why I said it's important for us to find our circle. The C is for credibility. What I know is true, Ben, is this, and my father has taught me this. I was adopted. And Tim McNamee, when he brought me in his life, one of the things he always says is that you're only as good as your name. And when trying doesn't translate into time or support as a leader, trust erodes. To employees, especially to Gen Z, busy feels the same as indifferent. And I said that before, but there's a reason why people call on Ben Eubanks, because he's dependable, because he's a man of his word, because he has character and integrity, right? We're only as good as our credibility, and our credibility is a representation of our name. And so how are you keeping your name, not your title? How are you keeping your name pure? It's not about saying yes and being a pleaser, but when you do say yes, it's about showing up and being able to mark those. And so your availability, your bandwidth, your credibility, there's power in your name. And if there's not, you should get some.
If there's not, you should get some. My goodness, how's that for a challenge, everybody? Straight from George Rogers. Woo, goodness. Okay, I'm gonna, Lordy, I'm like, all right. So a couple of quick things we're gonna run through here before we wrap up for the day. Great word, George. Great word. Oh goodness, I want to go for a run right now. Okay. If you hear us talking about research data, things like that, and you're like, curious about that, or I'd love to hear more about what George is talking about around the mental health data, or I want to hear more about what Ben has said around people learning and taking opportunity and autonomy together to create a right learning culture, any of those sorts of things, you ever want to see it, the research is free. It's available. You can get that anytime you want to. It's there in our research library. We're working on redesigning that because right now it's just a bunch of stuff. We're trying to get that redesigned so it's easier to find things in there by topic, but you can get that, again, for free, available. The giveaways. So we went through, grabbed a bunch of great comments from all of you. Wish we could do something for every single person here because there were so many good comments, so much conversation around supporting each other, supporting our people, supporting the business, and creating a workplace that people don't just survive in, George, but they thrive in. So for all of you, the actual instructions are not here on screen because George likes to roll that way, but you can shoot an email to events@lhra.io. If someone can drop that in the chat, I would appreciate it because my hands are busy. But events@lhra.io. Jill will get your name, get you a thing to fill out, and we'll get you all set up so we can get that to you as soon as we can. George, what are we actually giving away today?
We are going to give away the great community. So we have launched our Lighthouse community for HR Summer School alumni and all HR professionals. And so love for you to join our community, not just a community where we're dabbling and talking about a little bit of everything. We got different spaces. So if you want to learn more about TA learning, organizational change management, future of work, we have those different type of spaces, but we also will be having courses throughout the year. Coming up, we'll be doing a self-leadership course that's free for our community group on that. We have some other courses that's going to be a part of that, some ethics courses. So we got a lot of cool things planned, some learning things as well. And then it's just an opportunity to share best practices and or myths. We like to bust some myths together. Or if you have any questions or, hey, did you know, or how do you, or how have you? It's just a great private community to be able to connect with each other, like-minded people, just like we have here in the chat today.
Tremendous. Awesome. We're so excited about that, really taking that further. And as someone said a moment ago, like the best thing about summer school is all this together. Man, can't we do that all the time? Now you can. Now there's some things available out there for that. So such a fun time. I enjoy this. This is the best part of my day, I can guarantee you. So thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate the team, isolved, Hi Bob, Take Command. You heard from each of the leaders of those companies today, talking about some of the things that they're helping with, some of the themes and priorities that they're working on right now. And as I can see from the conversation, that aligns to a lot of things that we're thinking about. If you are certified and you want your credits, take a screenshot right there. Hold on, here you go. There you go. All right, take your screenshot, get your credits, and go take care of that. We appreciate you all for joining us, for spending time with us, for your hearts being where they are. We can see from the comments, we can see from the feedback, from the input from all of you, that you're not just putting in the hours at doing this work, but you're putting the heart behind it and the thought behind it about how you can do this well and really meet the needs of your people. So thank you all for joining us today. We can't wait to see you at Summer School 3-day event in June. As usual, we'll be sharing some announcements on that very soon. Some great things to come. We'll be giving away our Unity Award like we do every year. We have some other fun things wrapped into that. It's going to be a blast. George, I'm so excited about this year and the good things ahead. And I wish the best for everyone in our community. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up? Uh-oh. You're muted, George. I thought we were going to make it through this thing without that. Oh.
You know, we have to do that. It's a tradition. It's an HR Summer School tradition.
Not the one I meant to start with.
And I remember that phase. I remember the first HR Summer School where Ben Eubanks, I got the picture. I'm going to have to post it later today because you just reminded me of that. No, I'm excited. This was incredible 2.5 hours with our HR Summer School network and family, community, everything above, whichever part you are. Ben, I'm excited about just in a few months. We're almost done with January 2026. We're about to be knocking at the door of month number 2. And you know what comes after 2, 3? You know what comes after 3, 4, 5? And then month number 6 is June and HR Summer School. We already have some stuff planned, and we're excited about that. News is going to be coming out, so that's what I'm looking forward to.
Tremendous. Well, I'm glad to be buckled in right here with you. Looking forward to all the good things ahead. To all of you, thank you again for the time today, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Have a great one.